To welcome everyone is an understatement, and that is my job, is to do that. But before I welcome everybody, I'd like to speak a little about those who put this program together. I know this is not a good place to say this because it comes from the New England Patriots, and I realize I'm probably in the middle of New York Giants or New York Jets territory, but on their hats and on their t-shirts, it says, do your job. Do your job. Do your job. And let me say that a lot of people, lots of people, have done their job to put this together today. And it starts off with the board of directors and the officers, the board of advisors, the Hall of Fame executive committee that really gets the ball really rolling, late winter, early spring. R.A. Sylvia is the chairperson. Bruce Cohen, somewhere out here, is the vice chairperson. But the group that is our academy, if you will, is the group that is part of the selection committee. They met this year, late spring, at the Ron Bouchard Museum, and they deliberated all day. And from that, we had a total of 16 ballots that went out for voting. Today, 8 of you are here, including the Moose Hewitt family, are here because you are in the final 8. NEAR is custodians to the Hall of Fame. And I know a lot of people who are in NEAR, and a lot of people who are outside of NEAR, like today. And we take that responsibility very, very seriously. And we do it with joy and for the passion of auto racing. And that's what we're about, the passion of auto racing. Now, certainly I'd like to welcome our Hall of Fame inductees. Without you, I guess this day would be something different. Your family members. I don't think there's one person who sat behind the wheel of a race car that didn't have a family behind them. Your friends who are here today, family members also who are here today, general fans, and us from NEAR. We thank you very, very much. This is the day of days. As I wrote in my article, it is a moment in time. And since I represent NEAR, it is a privilege for us to be with you in this moment in time, the induction into the NEAR Hall of Fame. Thank you very much. Now we're going to do benediction. If you can stand, I'm going to ask you to stand, and we'll do the national anthem right after that. Let us pray, the God that we know in our heart. Lord, we take a moment to remember the veterans. And I don't know how many veterans that are here today, but probably at every table there's a few. Family members have sons and daughters in the military as we speak. We take a moment to remember that this was an inordinate year, but a lot of NEAR members have passed this year, including Hall of Famers. So we take a moment to remember them today. Lord, we ask you to bless us, all of us, at our tables, where old friendships are rekindled and new ones are made. It's such a great thing because it's people reaching out to people. We are here because you want us to be here. We certainly ask you to bless the inductees and their families and friends. There's no doubt about that. We ask you to bless all of us here today as well. We ask you to bless those who have prepared our food and those who will serve it. We ask you to bless the food that we're about to participate and to partake, and that we're eternally grateful. And we pray in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you. Now I would like to introduce Kevin Boucher. Kevin is the voice of Seekonk Speedway, and he is going to present for us our national anthem.
Thank you. Feel free to join in, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight all the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you.
Award goes to Russ Dowd. Russ started many, many years ago, probably in the 70s, racing mini midgets at the Stafford and the Westboro Speedway. And then, for you old guys, you remember him in the 98, the white and red Vega, where he qualified for the Pocono race when there was 85 cars to attempt to qualify that race. But unfortunately, his racing career is not going to be remembered as a driver. It's going to be for the long existence for 35 years of the voice of the Thompson Speedway. So please welcome Russ Dowd for the 2016 Frank Marrara Award, the voice of the Thompson Speedway. Microphone, Jimmy. Thank you. Once again.
There gets to be a point where these become necessary. Good afternoon to each and every one of you, and from the very bottom of my heart, I want to express appreciation for asking me to join you for this very, very special annual event. It is indeed a real honor to be recognized by this organization, and I would like to express my appreciation to President Paul Massey, to the officers, the directors, the Board of Advisors, and the 2016 Hall of Fame Executive Committee. It's a very special day here with so many who have been such a huge part of the sport that we all hold so near and dear. Those of you here today have played a major role in the excitement and the presentation of auto racing throughout the Northeast. My hearty congratulations to the members of the 2016 class of inductees into the Near Hall of Fame as well. In the past few weeks, I've been thinking quite a bit about the many years that I've spent around auto racing. As Mark mentioned, I started, I guess I was probably around 8 years old, in a go-kart at Thompson Speedway, went to the mini midgets, and then had an opportunity to drive a modified for the late Esther Lyon. And after several years, the decision was made to sell that race car and for a short time I became a spectator. However, Thompson race director and near Hall of Fame member Bill Slater kept after me nearly every week to go up and work in the announcer's booth. At the time, I was running a group of radio stations in Massachusetts, and I told Bill, I said, Bill, you know, I do this for a living. I announce all week long. When I come to the racetrack, I just want to come to the racetrack and enjoy myself, have some fun, and not be weighted down with just doing what I do all week long. But he persisted, and finally one day he called me at the office and he said, Russ, he said, I really need to have you help me out. I said, what's up, Bill? He said, I need to have you work with Rich Bono up in the announcer's booth tonight, but he says, only one night, that's it. Just one night. If you could help me out, I would appreciate it. And for those of you who knew Bill, when Bill asked a favor of you, you didn't say no. And so, that's what I did. I went to work for one night. But little did I know that night that it would be the start of some 35 wonderful years of calling races at Thompson. I was fortunate enough to also work at Stafford for many years, Riverside Park, Westboro, Waterford, Pocono, and many other tracks throughout New England all the way down into the Carolinas. I've used the term worked, but in all honesty it was more fun than it was work. I had the opportunity to announce with some of the very best in the business over the years, including an inductee this year, Jack Arute Jr. And I was able to learn from each and every one of those opportunities. I was extremely fortunate to have called all 130 modified tour races run at Thompson from the inception of the tour right up through 2015. Along the way, there were so many, many incredible races, as I think about it. And they occurred in every division. Mini stocks and Pro 4s, modifieds and super modifieds, and everything in between. But there were also those times that we will never forget, those tragic nights that will stay with us for the rest of our lives. It was an amazing career, and I owe so much to the drivers, their crews, the people that I worked with, and especially to Don Honig, who was one of the most incredible persons I ever worked for, and for the last 2 years that I was at Thompson, for having the opportunity to work with Josh Fineda, who was also just a class act. As I told Mark Alden the day that he called me about today's presentation, at no time did I ever think, as we went along the way, that when I announced my retirement, that it would be anything but an opportunity to just kind of slide on out and be under the radar and just simply leave quietly without fanfare. After all, when you're fortunate enough to be able to do something that you truly, truly love and deal with such a wonderful group of people as racers, that alone should be all that anyone could ask for. As I said, all of this and so much more has filled my mind in the past few weeks, and it has come to this very special day today. Again, I can't find words to express my sincere appreciation to those of you who have worked over the years with me, and for those of you who have made this day and this award possible. It is a day that I will always cherish, and it is the result of a lifetime of, like you, loving the sport of auto racing. Thank you very much.
Russ Dow, that is an amazing story. A one-night stand that lasted for exactly 10,950 days. I guess you really extended your welcome. If you were ever kidnapped, knocked unconscious, wake up, and you hear Russ Dow's voice, you can tell him to send the ransom note to the ransom money to Thompson Speedway, because you know that's where you are whenever you hear Russ. Our next presentation will be made by Justin St. Louis. It's a Rada Mitchell Media Award, and it's quite fitting that Justin will do the presenting because he was a winner a year ago. So here is Justin St. Louis to present the award honoring members of the media.
I don't know, first of all, who's in charge of seating, but put me with Paul Ferraris every year because I'm having fun tonight. All right, all right. Next year I want to do this with Paul up here with me, though. We'll just work on that. All right, so as you know, the Mitchell Rata Media Award is given each year by NEAR in memory of highly respected motorsports writers Charlie Mitchell of the Norwalk Hour and Jack Rata of the Manchester Union Leader. I wasn't around during their time covering racing and telling the world about most of your stories, but I'm a racing history buff just like everybody else in here, and I've used a lot of their work in my research, and I'm telling you, those guys were damn good at their jobs, and their contributions and dedication are what keeps memories alive for racing's greatest era, in my opinion. Absolutely. And the past recipients of the Mitchell Rata Media Award are a who's who of our business. Val Lasour, Sam Weisberg, Charlie Mitchell himself, Lou Modestino, Walter Renner, Chris Economaki, Bill Balser, Howie and Mary Hodge, Dave Moody, Peter Vanderveer, Bonesy, and for some reason last year me. It's a great award, and it's a huge honor. And today it's my honor to present this to two journalists, not one but two, who are very deserving of this award. They're writers that I grew up as a kid respecting, and now I have the pleasure of working with them in the press box at several racetracks. Originally they hail from the same town in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont, but the paths that led them to document local stock car racing were vastly different. First up, Richard Big Bigelow is a part of a large racing family from St. Johnsbury, Vermont, and they all had a knack of going out on top in racing. His father, Jerry, was retired from driving after winning the final championship at the Northeastern Speedway in 1966. Biggie's brother, Bob, retired from driving in 1987 as the reigning Vermont state champion. Biggie himself won half a dozen races at Riverside Speedway in Groveton, New Hampshire, and in his final season of racing in 1992, he won the first ever race in the late model division at Thunder Road. So a pretty cool statistical anomaly for that family. Biggie's foray in media began with guest appearances on local racing radio programs in 1996, and then he started writing his popular column called Strap In for his hometown daily newspaper, the Caledonian Record, in April of 1998. And it's rare, but this column runs 52 weeks a year. And since his writing debut almost 19 years ago, Biggie estimates that over some 965 plus weeks since his hire date, he's only missed 5 or 6 columns. So that's a pretty cool testament to his longevity. All the while, he has been and continues to be the friendliest, most level-headed, most universally well-liked guy in the pit area. He's a little bit under the weather lately, and he wasn't quite feeling up to making the trip down here, but he has asked me to accept the award on his behalf. He's also asked me to say these words for him. He says, I'm sorry that I couldn't make the trip today. I do want to thank the committee at NEAR for choosing me to win this award. I wouldn't be where I am today without my great friend Reed Garfield, who I met at the Caledonian Record 19 years ago this April. This is a fabulous honor for me, and one that I never dreamed I'd be in line for. Being born into a racing family with my dad, Jerry, well, racing has always been a big part of my life, and I just love all the friends I've met at the racetrack. Enjoy the rest of your day and travel safely. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone at a racetrack in the spring. So I will accept this award for Biggie, and congratulations to him. The other writer that we're honoring today is a friend of mine named Phil Whipple. He was introduced to the sport at the age of 18, sitting in the grandstands with his dad at the 1979 Oxford 250, and from that day he says he was totally hooked, and who wouldn't be? He followed the sport locally for the next dozen years as a fan, and then he started penning the Vermont Vibrations column for Val Lasour's Speedway Scene in 1992. Phil spent several years as a PR consultant for a number of teams competing in the NASCAR Busch North Series in the early 1990s before getting back into journalism. And he relocated to Maine in 1995, and his work began to appear in Trackside Magazine, New England Racing, and Busch North Scene. In 2000, he joined the staff of the daily newspaper, the Lewiston Sun-Journal, and he continues to cover motorsports extensively in and around the Pine Tree State, most notably, of course, the Oxford 250, a race at which this past August he led a large team from the Sun-Journal that provided endless coverage of the event on both its print and digital platforms. He gets it, and he ties all the generations of fans together all at once. Phil is well known here at NEAR. He's a historian of the sport. He's a cheerleader for the modern day of racing, and it's my privilege to welcome and congratulate this man to the stage, the second co-winner of this year's Mitchell Rata Media Award, Mr. Phil Whipple.
As a matter of fact, I'd love to say a word since the microphone and me are very good friends. Good afternoon, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. I was, like so many other members of the media, introduced to the inside the fences side through old Val LeSueur, the old Super Val, the Speedway scene. No compensation, just getting credentials, but it got me in the sport, and it made me realize that it's you folks, it's the people, it's the personalities in this sport that draws you in. And boy, did I ever get hooked for a good many years on it. Just been fortunate enough to write for a lot of wonderful publications. The Busch North Series teams that I worked with were high-class outfits. The late Alan Avery's team, Fadden Racing, Bobby Dragon, and of course when I first relocated to Maine to work with the O'Connor brothers, O'Connor Racing was pretty high level too. So I've been very blessed ever since I got involved in this sport. Doors continuously swung open for me. Whether it was announcing at White Mountain Motorsports Park on the mic, whether it was writing PR releases for teams that had significant sponsorship that needed it, or whether it was documenting a race, I've just been very lucky to have great opportunities. And so here I am today, now 16 years under my belt with the Sun Journal, one of the daily newspapers in northern New England that has tremendous regard and respect. I want to tell you all, I promised our executive editor that I would say this, and I'm going to say it to you all today. It is a great honor for me to write for the Sun Journal out of Lewiston, Maine. I'm lucky to have the following I have in northern New England covering this great sport. I'm just a privileged and lucky man. They think a lot of my writing skills, so they said, don't plan on going anywhere, Phil, we're going to keep you around. So I'm very, very blessed. I want to thank all the folks on the selection committee here at NEAR for making this happen for me. I've just done this for over 2 decades now because of a deep love for the sport and you folks that make it all go round. The race teams, the crew members, the families. And I'll plan to do it for many, many years in the future. So thank you all folks for making this happen for me. I'm going to continue and love this sport and document it to the best of my ability in the years to come. Again, thank you all.
And your boss says he likes everything you do and he's glad to have you. Where could I get a boss like that? Now our next presentation is a Danny Pardee Memorial Award. And for those of you who didn't know him, you missed out because he was one of the straight shooters of motorsports, one of the founding fathers of NEAR, and one of the founding fathers of the New England Racing Hall of Fame. And to make the presentation of this year's award, here is Fred Savola.
I am honored to be the presenter of the Dan Pardee Award. If you all know Dan, you know why. Dan was a no-nonsense, straight shooter, hardworking guy. You could go to him anytime you wanted to. You get knowledge, you get information, you get help. The award goes to someone who's done an outstanding and continuous job in the presentation of the Hall of Fame. Past winners are R.A. Silva, Doug Farrell, Matt Buckler, Pete Newsom, Ron Blanchette, Dave Dykes, Pete Zanardi, and last year Bruce Cohen. This year's recipient is also a hardworking guy. No nonsense, expert organizer, and he spent multiple terms here as president. Now you know who I'm talking about. But look around you. In the words of Mr. Zanardi a little while ago, if it wasn't for this gentleman, we probably wouldn't be here today. We probably wouldn't have been here last year or the year before. It's tough to keep this organization going, and this man is able to keep people going, organize people, move ideas, keep everybody happy. As president in 2000, when I joined the organization, he helped me, he supported all the things that I tried to do, and he's done the same thing for many, many people in this room. I'm having the pleasure today of presenting this award to Mr. Alpine.
Thanks, Fred. This is a great award and great honor for me. I was fortunate enough to be president back in 1997 when we sort of conceived the idea of having a Hall of Fame. I was a strong part of my vision. I thought the club could grow. I thought we were capable of putting on a Hall of Fame. And Danny Pardee took heart in my vision, and truly he made it happen. And I would have never been able to be successful but he knew all the ins and outs, he knew all the people. And we gathered together a great crew, and looking right down the aisle, one of the most important persons we got to come on our board is an inductee for today, Jackie Root. He agreed to be our first MC, and he gave us the credibility that we needed. And Pete Zanardi and a few other guys came through, and we really put together a group. And our first Hall of Fame induction was as big as this one. We had 350 people at the Carriage House in West Springfield. And when Danny Pardee died on December 28th, 2007, it was just a major blow. It was a major blow to me, major blow to the club. I just relied on Danny for doing everything, and he did it, and he was always there to be counted on. As an aside, Danny and I were always friends, and we had always conversations, and we often talked that at some point there'd be a Hall of Fame Memorial Award. And since I was about 10 years older, it was kind of assumed that the first award would be named the Al Feeney Hall of Fame Memorial Award. Sadly, it's the Danny Pardee Memorial Award, but I'm so happy to finally have received it. Thank you so much, and thanks for all the support and all the work that the Hall of Fame committee has done over the years. Thank you.
Al Feeney, longtime president and one of the pioneers of this dinner. And if you hung around with Danny Pardee for any length of time, you knew two things: where the best racetracks were and where the best restaurants were. We have a new award this year. In 1998, the first year of the Hall of Fame, one of the inductees was Ron Bouchard. He was of the first class. And today, we honor his memory with the Ron Bouchard Award. And to make that presentation, President of NEAR, Paul Massey and Paula Flemke Bouchard, here to present the Ron Bouchard Award.
Thank you.
You can say something if you want to at the end.
Okay.
Ken Squire is the first recipient of the Kenny Bouchard Memorial Award. Ron Bouchard. I was looking at Kenny. I see him over there. Memorial Award is for outstanding lifetime service to racing. Ken Squire is the son of a Vermont radio broadcasting pioneer. Kenley Dean Squire was born in Waterbury, Vermont in 1935. His on-air work with WDEV radio began when he was just 12 years old. And in 1949, he began his motorsports career when at the age of 14, he announced his first stock car race from the back of a logging truck at a long-gone field in a small town of Morrisville. From there, he branched out to places like Mallett's Bay Speedway near Burlington, Northeastern Speedway near St. Johnsbury, Monadnock Speedway in New Hampshire, and several other tracks. In 1960, at the age of 25, he built and opened Thunder Road International Speed Bowl in Barry, Vermont. Thunder Road raced then, as it does now, on Thursday night. That choice was no accident. Barry is known as the granite capital of the world, and Ken knew that the local quarries paid their workers on Thursday. He wanted that money first, and he got it. Thunder Road averaged 6,500 spectators every week for the first several years, and eventually became one of the premier short tracks in the nation. Ken created the track's signature event, the famed Vermont Milk Bowl, in 1962, in which the winner was decided on a 3-segment total score and had the honor of kissing the local beauty queen. And I always get a kick out of this when I saw it in Speedway Scene. It was a genuine dairy crowd. Unbelievable. Ken built Catamount near Burlington in 1965, hosting weekly modified and late model races to a packed house. He worked in television through 2000. One of the earliest events that he called, of course, was the Talladega race in 1981, when this award's namesake, Ron Bouchard,
Put Fitchburg on the map.
put Fitchburg on the map, captured one of the most exciting upset victories in NASCAR history. Ken and Ron shared their New England pride down in Dixie for years and were great friends. I guess he did, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Yeah. He put Fitchburg, Massachusetts on the map along with Ken Bouchard and Ron.
That's Ken. That's okay. We'll get through it.
The NASCAR success translated to other sports. Ken called kart and Formula One races as part of CBS Olympic coverage in the early 1990s. He was recently reintroduced to a new generation of racing fans by NBC during an annual Darlington Throwback event. In the meantime, now, at age 81, Ken can be found on a microphone at Thunder Road every Thursday night, so long as he's not announcing in Charlotte, Loudon, or elsewhere. He works at his beloved WDEV every day and still hosts Vermont's favorite radio program, Music to Go to the Dump On. Only in Vermont, I think. I'm not sure. Every Saturday morning, and he's also chairman of the Vermont Symphony Orchestra. Now, it is a complete flip. The NASCAR Hall of Fame in 2013 created the Squire Hall Award for NASCAR's media and excellence in honor of Ken and fellow broadcaster Barney Hall. He is a member of several Halls of Fame, including ours, the Nair Hall of Fame, when he was inducted in 2002. Now he adds the inaugural Ron Bouchard Award to his already crowded mantle. Ken is not able to be here today. He is not feeling well. It's amazing of that career. When I read this, it was like I was there on television watching so many of these things. It's almost like watching Mr. Craven on ESPN every week. It's there all the time. It was great. Receiving his award for him today is a fellow who just left here, Justin St. Louis. Justin? You want to say anything? You're good.
I'm good.
Go ahead.
I think I need to start charging a service fee for this. Ken has a bum leg right now, and he's sorry that he couldn't make it down today, but he did want me to pass on these words and some of my own. First, he wanted me to thank the folks from Near for the consideration in winning the inaugural Ron Bouchard Award. As you know, he's abundantly proud to be a New Englander, and he and Ron became good friends as they traveled what was then the NASCAR Winston Cup circuit in the early 80s. Ken told me that among the countless memorable races and sporting events that he's called over a career spanning 65 years, still going strong, he counts calling Ron Bouchard's win at Talladega as one of his fondest highlights, both professionally and personally. He was proud of such an unpredictable accomplishment by a team from back home. Now, you may recall that as the final laps came around, CBS's live video feed from Talladega dropped out, but the audio remained, and Ken instantly and organically switched from his television call to his radio voice, which obviously demands a little bit more description and excitement because there's no picture, of course. And in illustrating a moment that 35 years later, what a call it was, and it still thrives in the annals of NASCAR history, he described the finish immediately as impossible and in a formation resembling, and I quote, a squadron of B-51s out of World War II, end quote. The kid from Fitchburg shocked the world and beat Darrell Waltrip and Terry Labonte with a win. And of course, back home in Fitchburg, the family was watching, or listening, I guess, and in frustration with CBS's technical difficulties, and in a sports desk wrap-up a few days later, Ken described how Bob Bouchard, quote, carefully picked up his television set and thrust it through the wall. So, and of course, it's that style and candor that has endeared Ken Squire to millions of racing and sports fans around the globe. And I'm fortunate to have actually competed at a couple of his tracks for a few years, and now I'm proud to say that I'm in my 14th year of working for him. I had hair when I started. He's still got more than I do. I definitely learned from the best, and I know that, but as a Vermonter, I'm lucky that I get to hear him in action every day on the radio, and yes, he still does host Music to Go to the Dump by every Saturday. As successful as he has been, it'd be somewhat understandable if he let that celebrity go to his head and didn't have any time for us little people, but I can tell you that's not the case, and it never will be. And I didn't know Ron Bouchard, but everything that I've been told, he's the same way. In spite of his status as a nationally recognized athlete or his unignorably successful business ventures, he did, as Ken does, have time for everyone. I will leave you with this brief story about Ken. In the mid-1990s, only 24 hours after calling one of the Daytona 500s on live TV for millions of people across the country and around the world, 24 hours later, Ken was in a high school gymnasium in Hardwick, Vermont, a small, rural, backwoods town of about 3,000 people, on a cold February night, which is about as far away from the sands of Daytona Beach as you can possibly get. And after making God knows how much money for CBS just 24 hours before, he took a financial loss to go announce a high school girls basketball game for WDEV radio on Monday night. My friend and colleague, Tom Haley from the Rutland Herald newspaper, was covering the game that night, and he remembers the action is fairly dreadful, and the way sports go where we're from, the winning team probably only scored 20 points. No matter. Ken called the game with the same passion and enthusiasm for those high school girls as he did for Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon the day before. And after it was over, Tom Haley asked Ken, you know, you were just announcing one of the biggest events in the sporting world. Why would you even care to be here? And Ken's answer was, because their audiences care the same. Never forget your roots, and Ron Bouchard didn't, Ken Squire hasn't, and on behalf of Ken, thank you.
And it's amazing that the first race that Ken Squire ever broadcast was on the back of a logging truck. No wonder he always knew so much about the Wood Brothers. Now you know why I'm a writer and not an MC. Now, if you look at YouTube, artfully changing the subject, if you look at YouTube, you can actually see the original CBS telecast of that, complete with the picture going down. And then if you stay with it, they go back a week later, and Brett Musburger tells people, this is what you missed last week. And then you can actually see what happened. And the way it happened was exactly the way that Ken Squire described it. So once again, one of the great impromptu calls in announcing history. Now we are ready to open the doors of the Hall of Fame. And we start with the veterans, the guys who raced in the World War II era of auto racing, of stock car racing, and these are the founding fathers of the sport that everybody loves today. To make the presentation, we used to call him the historian of motorsports, but we can't say it anymore because he is also a member of the New England Hall of Fame, R.A. Sylvia.
Good afternoon. It's good to see such a large crowd here today. It's like the old days. Just like to say a word on the criteria for the veterans class this year is a little different than we have done in the past. Still allowed 3 people, but we got to thinking about this. A few other historians here, like Mr. St. Louis and Mr. Whipple and Nick Tito over there, blinding me. And we kind of talked this thing over, and we figured people in the New England area that were active really prior to 1960 kind of didn't have much of a chance of getting in. There's so many people who were worthy, and but what we decided that we break it down into 3 segments. For instance, the first one is from the end of the 1800s up to 1920. The second category is from 20 to 40. And the final category is people who are active between 40 and 1959. Of course, World War II took a little chunk out of that, so the time periods are about the same. So We started somewhere, '04, I think, was the first person we got in the Hall of Fame that qualified under this, and it was Fred Frame, who won Indianapolis in '32. And everybody heard of Indianapolis, and so that wasn't bad. We didn't have much trouble about getting him in there. The following year, we got a gentleman, Harry Grant, which we mentioned that to most people in the thing, and they looked at you cross-eyed with the exception of Nick. Who the heck was Harry Grant? Well, Harry Grant brought fame to New England. He was a Boston guy, and he primarily won his best races with a car made in Providence, Rhode Island. But he won the Vanderbilt Cup on Long Island 2 consecutive years, prior to even Indianapolis having the 500-mile race, so it was the biggest thing in the country. And in '09, we got our third person from the earlier years. She was active in the 50s and 60s. And as our colleague Bruce Coe, another historian, liked to say when we got this lady in, Bertha Small, she was a twofer because she was a woman and of the Jewish persuasion. So he liked to say that we covered 2 categories there. So for this year's thing, we got to go back. I'm going to do 2 people that we could not find any family or any relatives or anything, but that does not lessen their contributions, and they should be in the Hall of Fame. And the first one we're going to go in the middle section from 20 to 40 was a gentleman named John W. Burgess, who was raised on the North Shore of Boston, had a talent for becoming an artist. He got on a scholarship to some big fancy school in Boston, and he just didn't like the constraints about it, and he went out and continued on his own. But his older brother ran sprint cars, and he got into sprint cars too, and midgets, etc. And in the mid-30s, the midgets came to New England, and he was interested in promoting them, and he and 2 of his cohorts made a run of 15 dozen midgets or so, and they rented them, leased them out, and they had the first race for midgets in northern New England. There was a little bit in southwestern Connecticut, being so close to New York City, which was already going. But they ran a race at a place called Lincoln Park in Boston, and it was successful. And the promoter, already acting in promoter ways sometimes, he said, "Yeah, you guys are good. You want to come back next week?" And they said, "Sure." He said, "Well, a couple of things. You got to hire my cousin Louis to be the parking attendant. You got to hire my aunt Genevieve to cook and everything, you know, and you got to hire this cop and that cop." And they said, "Forget it." They said, "Where are you going to go?" So they went up to Topsfield, Mass, and outside the fairgrounds there, they ran a little 5th-mile dirt oval, and that continued till after the war. So that was the impetus for midget racing coming to New England. He, during the war, worked for GE in the development of some hush-hush stuff out in the Muroc Dry Lakes, and continued his artwork. He did a lot of paintings of these rockets and crazy planes, and became a well-known artist. And around the 80s or so, he started publishing sketches of his old sprint car days. He did calendars. They've been in famous books and prints, and they were well-known everywhere. He met Briggs Cunningham, a Hall of Fame member, at the New York World's Fair in 1940. And he had rebuilt a car on consignment from Briggs, one of high-dollar racing cars. And they met up face-to-face at that time. And when Mr. Cunningham got his big museum going in California, he hired John to be a curator, a position he held until he, unfortunately, for a man with an artistic bent, both mechanically and art-wise, he started to lose his sight. And John died in 2007. Nope, wait a minute, I'm looking at the wrong bio. 92. So that was, I always thought he was kind of like the father of midget racing in New England. The second gentleman is from Connecticut, Fred Mika, from Norwalk in the western part of the state. He had a relatively brief career in the midgets. He won the first ever, most notable probably, NEMA race in 1953 at the Seekonk, Mass Speedway. He went on to become the NASCAR midget champion 2 consecutive years, 55 and 56. And then he ended up 3rd the following year. He ran mostly the Fred Kiernan V860, which more than held its own against the predominantly Orphees in the ARDC. And he died himself in 2007, as I previously mentioned. Now finally, we're going to bring up people saying, who are these guys? Somebody looked at the cover of the program sitting next to me and said, who the heck are these guys with the big top hats and the lots of hair on the face? And they were Francis Edgar Stanley and Freeland Oscar Stanley. And many of the older people are genuine car nuts in here have heard of the Stanley Steamers. Well, these were the gentlemen that developed the Stanley Steamer. And they grew up in Kingfield, Maine, which I looked on the map and man, there's nothing out there but just a few little dots of cities here and there. But they were pretty much self-taught guys. They were very talented. They made their own violins that worked quite well. They invented the airbrush, which many people in here have had to deal with in their businesses. They invented the dry printing plate thing, which was so successful and more economical than anything else on the market for that. Kodak pursued them relentlessly for years. Eventually they succumbed to the lure of money and sold it to them. But I remember most, and most people do, for developing the Stanley Steamer automobile. In the early days, back around the turn of the century, there were three motive powers: steam, gas, and electricity. And they were about the best steam car going. They were successful on the oval tracks, very successful on hill climbs throughout New England. And the most famous thing was those high-speed runs. And they set a record on Ormond Beach in Florida in 1906, and when I was talking to people about this, I said, how fast do you think a car would go in 1906? And I had everything from 20 miles an hour to maybe 60, most people said. I said, well, yeah. Well, the boys from Maine did it at 127.66 in 1906, and they just looked at me like I was full of crap. But it's true. Unfortunately, they built a larger one the following year, and the same driver, Fred Marriott, who worked for the company, was a single man, so he ended up with the driving chores. And he was approaching 200 at Ormond Beach. Almost too high to record how fast he was going. There was a little dip in the beach, and he took quite a vicious flip, and they all retired from racing right after that. So at this point, I'd like to invite up, all the way here from New Jersey, Sarah Stanley, and her husband, Don Davidson, who was a relative, distant relative of one of the Stanley brothers, and John Lindeman, who is from nearby Glastonbury, Connecticut, and is the head of the board of directors of the Stanley Museum in Kingfield, Maine. So if you'd please come on up, we'll get you your plaque.
Hi, my name is John Linderman. I'm one of the trustees of the Stanley Museum, and I'd like to thank the New England Antique Racing Association for honoring the Stanley brothers that came up with the Stanley Steamer. When I first heard about this, my first reaction is, how did you ever find out about us? First of all, it was 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, when the Stanleys were doing the racing. As Mr. Sylvia just mentioned, it was 1906 when they first broke the record down on Ormond Beach. And beside that being so long ago, it was a steam car that did this. And there's not that big a community even today in the steam car. So I talked to Mr. Massey, and he advised me that it was really Mr. Sylvia, who is, I guess, your historian. And so I'd like to give a special thanks to Mr. Sylvia for recognizing the Stanley family and the racing exploits that they did. When I heard about the award, I thought, well, really, this is for the Stanley twins. They were twins that really did the development of the steam cars and the racers back then. And I thought it would really be appropriate if we could get a relative. And so coming here today to accept the award is the great-granddaughter of F.O. Stanley, Sarah Stanley.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Can you hear me all right? It's a pleasure to be here. This is a new organization, as John was just saying, for us to hear about. We're thrilled to know about this wonderful organization. It's been a pleasure to meet you, Ari, for the first time, and Mr. Massey. Thank you so much for having us here. Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Stanley. I'm the great-granddaughter of Francis Edgar Stanley and the great-grandniece of Freeland Oscar Stanley. On behalf of my great-grandfather and his identical twin, I thank you for this recognition of their contribution to auto racing. It's an honor to receive this induction into the New England Auto Racing Hall of Fame on their behalf and as a representative of the Stanley family. I look forward to giving this award to the Stanley Museum in Kingfield, Maine, the twins' birthplace, and an organization established in 1981 to remember and share the important history and contribution of the twins and their family. In the early days of the car industry and racing, steam set the performance pace. On January 26, 1906, the Stanley Racer, driven by Fred Marriott, set an astounding speed record, as you mentioned a minute ago, Ari, on the dense sands of Ormond Beach, reaching over 127 miles per hour. The record was unbeaten for 4 years, the longest time such a record has held so long. These two men were technologists, car people. They had insatiable appetites for knowledge and technology, an unstoppable energy and vision forward into and through unsolved technical questions and challenges. They were fiercely independent. They had great humor, tremendous wit, a deep love of music and art. My sense as I conjure from these 3 generations past is the magnitude of their technological vision and prowess was matched with a vitality and passion for life. True representatives of Yankee ingenuity. It's important to remember our automotive history and our racing history. Thank you for helping us do so with this tremendous honor.
It is time to take attendance. How many people are here today from Maine? Oh, we have a good turnout. How many from New Hampshire? Okay, we have a few. Do we have any people from Vermont with us today? A big bunch. What about Massachusetts? Bay Staters. And they're all Patriot fans. Rhode Island. How many people do we have from Rhode Island? Out in the corner, looking for better seats for next year. And how about the home team? How many are here from Connecticut? Now, Brian Ross chastised me one year. How many people are here from New York? 1. And only because gas is $2.20 a gallon. And our final question, how many people, as soon as this dinner is over, are going back to Florida? Wow, maybe the gas isn't as cheap as we thought. It is time to open the doors to our Elite 8 in the New England Hall of Fame. And they come from all over, from New Britain, from Norwalk, from Danbury, to places I can't even pronounce, like Ascutney, Vermont. But they have one thing in common. They have gone the extra mile, and they have taken that one extra step that enabled them to be Hall of Famers. So it's time to meet the class of 2016. And to make the first presentation, this man not only has won the highest accolade, he's a member of the New England Hall of Fame, he's also won the Frank Morado Award, he's also won the Danny Pardee Award, and when it comes to coverage in daily newspapers, him and Charlie Mitchell were the 2 guys who were the first to write about motorsports in a daily newspaper in Connecticut. Here is Pete Zanardi.
Thank you, Matt. For my next act, he just called me old, I think, and truly I am old because I am here to induct Jackie Root. 17 years ago, I inducted his father. That's pretty old. So as far as the Roots go, this isn't my first rodeo. One of my earliest memories with the Roots was the dinner that they had at the Old Valley restaurant when Jack announced that he had bought the place from Mal Barlow. After all the announcements and the dinner and everything, Jack was kind of holding court in the bar, and we were all after dinner drinks and everything, and someone came by, I guess trying to be funny or something, and said, "What, Jack, no cigars?" Well, let me tell you, Jack sent somebody for cigars. So you knew right then and there auto racing in this area was going to get a little buffing up. Jackie Arut, I think, is a cause, and both a cause and effect of that very day. You know, you can look at Jackie on a national level, and you can look at Jackie, what he did locally. No question about it, Jackie had a lot to do with pumping up our parochial pride. You know, it was great to look at this guy on TV at the 500 and go, wow, you know, I knew that guy when he was just starting. And you know, one of the things that I always loved about him, he was a real, honest-to-God, in-your-face journalist. Ask A.J. Foyt about the questions Jackie Arut will ask you. I really kind of enjoyed that. If there's something I hope rubbed off on him from me, it was that. But we're here more, I think, today to honor more than our own pride. I think Jackie came to Stafford from the University of Vermont, where he was, believe it or not, the mascot for the football team. I mean, I watched this idiot running around in a catamount uniform. You know, God. And he also attached himself to the aforementioned Kenny Squire. And I assume he was up there spending his old man's money, so sometime he went to class too. It was in Vermont. I digress here a little bit, but the thing about Jackie is when you see people walking by, or you hear somebody's name, somehow there's a story. You're back and you think of a story that involved Jackie. I saw Ronnie Narduzzi a little before, and one of the great stories was during the All-Star race at Catamount Stadium, which of course is just up the road from the University of Vermont. Ronnie got busted up a little bit and wound up in the hospital. And Jackie took Ronnie's dad back to the fraternity house at the University of Vermont. Now I can only imagine the effect that had on the son of an immigrant who grew up in Chester, Connecticut, which was probably the size of this hall. You know, I can just think of that. I remember it must have been really exciting for Gene. But my point here is what I want to impress on you, what Jackie brought to New England racing when he came from Vermont. You know, I mean, he did have some advantages. The biggest one was your old man owning the place. But he came and he learned his lessons well from Kenny Squire, I think. Of course, the big deal is the announcing deal. First of all, he built a state-of-the-art thing at Stafford. But more than that, it's who he shared that announcer's booth with. I mean, look at the Stafford alumni on the national level doing auto racing. Right now, the people who came out of Stafford and are announcing top-notch auto racing today. I think that's something, I think that makes him almost a trailblazer. And let me tell you what this guy did as far as changing media. The way the media was represented in the state, you know? I mean, the press box that he ran, he thought he was the New York Yankees up there with, and what he did for the modifieds, what he and his whole family did for the modifieds. You know, some people say they saved them. Well, at the risk of Jackie inventing Jackie's spleen, they did not save the modifieds. But I'll tell you what they did do. They shined an ever more brighter light on them. The modifieds were Jack's and Jackie's major concern. And you know, I was thinking the other day, because I kind of was in that office a little bit, and we came up with all kinds of things, you know, like the grace of God and 400 horsepower and the Pinto Revolution and the Coupe Group, you know. Well, Jackie came up with some of them, and what he didn't come up with, he hounded you until you did. He wasn't, his father used to go testator, which in Italian means stubborn. Well, I'll tell you what, he inherited that from his old man. Because what Jackie was just absolutely centered on making things new, and what is now commonplace at all New England racetracks as far as the media is concerned was once brand new at Stafford Speedway. Another thing, this guy he was always looking for things different, and last year when Jackie inducted Sam Posey, I remember when Sam Posey came to Stafford and drove every division Stafford had. And it resulted in really a pretty good story. He was constantly looking for something different, for something new. Well, today, this is another story. And Jackie, my friend, I'm equally proud to be part of it. We'd like to humble down here.
I want to give you a couple of postscripts for what he said. When Mr. Narducci ended up at my fraternity house, there were no illegitimate children. He did walk around all night with, "Oh my God." I want to give you another postscript, Peter. I worked at Stafford before my father bought it. I was the flagman. I was making $35 cash. My father buys the racetrack. I get up one morning eating my cornflakes and said, "You know, Dad, your announcers suck." My father says, "You think so? You're fired from the flag stand. Get your fat butt upstairs." I got paid nothing. And as far as A.J. Foyt is concerned, there are probably, if they ever tear down the Indianapolis Motor Speedway garages, there's got to be at least 144 rubber snakes that he would throw at me, and the Finoro family knows what I'm talking about. I'm really overwhelmed. And my brother Mark will say, "Yeah, bull crap, you never have." But when I was called, never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that I would be on the receiving end of this accolade. I've had the great fortune and the honor to induct not only some really truly great racers, but some really dear friends. And I always looked at that was my job. That's what I do. Because even though guys like me, Mike Joy, etc., Mike Massaro, while we may have moved on from New England, you can never take New England out of us. And the one wonderful thing that I always had going for me was whether it was Paula and Eddie's father telling me when I was a young kid, "You know what, you're gonna have to up your game. If you want to be an announcer, you're gonna have to start asking better questions." Or if it was Bugsy Stevens, or Fred DeSero, or Teddy Christopher. I always felt when I would come home, that's indeed what I was. I was home. And you allude to the first Ron Bouchard Award. Let me tell you the wonderful thing, and Bob Johnson and I had a little conversation about this, and Bones and I had a conversation about this. We were too stupid back then to know that we were swimming with sharks. We were also way too passionate and believed too much in the love affair that we were enjoying with motorsports to think there was anything wrong with winning the Talladega 500. After all, that was long before you raced for jet fuel. It was when you went down there with a dream and with a passion and you gave it all. And not necessarily out on the racetrack. It might be in the race shop, or it might be just the way Ricky Craven, who's going to join us in the class, laid it on the line at Darlington. But to me, the centering that wasn't any different than watching Randy LaJoy, his dad, Don LaJoy, or many of the great people that we've got in this, laying it on the line at Westboro, at Thompson, at Stafford. The abiding passion is the same. 17 years ago, my brother, Lisa, myself, our family, we really let the patriarch loose here on the Hall of Fame. And it kind of brought full circle one of the things that I think my father really believed in, and that was the future of racing. But I'll leave you with this story. My father used to always walk in, and you remember this, Peter, he'd say, okay, he'd say, Jackie, what do you got playing at the circus tonight? Because he was a diehard. Well, I came up with this wonderful idea. I could book Evel Knievel. And I convinced him, and I said, Dad, Evel Knievel, next year he's going to jump the Snake River. I don't care. The only way I got Evel Knievel booked is Frank Ferrara convinced him that he didn't have to run the modifieds that night. We'd run a 50-lap midget race with Nema. The night dawns, we got Evel Knievel, we got the Nema midgets, they run, everything is going great. We got people hanging off the rafters. My father, whose middle name was Butt, you did a good job, Butt. Never once. He's riding around his little motorcycle, and all of a sudden, we got the biggest crowd, not since a Spring Sizzler, ever at Stafford on a Friday night. And we sold a lot of beer. 10 o'clock becomes 10:30, becomes 11 o'clock, and Evel Knievel is still locked in his trailer. As my father rides up on his motorcycle and says, you really screwed the pooch this time, Jackie. So anyways, we have these plywood because Evel said he couldn't do it on the racetrack. He finally comes out, gives us the speech about not doing drugs and how he told us how he had broken every bone in his body and how now he was going to astonish us with this feat. He made one run down the plywood and rode up to the start-finish line and said, I can't make the jump. This is the passion that my father had and the pride that he had in Stafford. He grabbed Evel Knievel's leather lapels and pulled him over the handlebars and said, listen, you son of a bitch. Either you make this jump or you're going to teach me how to ride that damn motorcycle because they're going to burn my stands down. Fast forward 20 years later, I'm at the SEMA show with Weld Wheels, and we're signing autographs, and a guy walks by, and it's Evel Knievel. And he sees my little placard, and he says, you aren't Jack Arute. And I says, no, I really am. He says, no, you're not. You're too young to be Jack Arute. I know Jack Arute. He's the craziest son of a bitch I ever met in my life. I know the one thing my father would want to say is congratulations, Jackie, but he'd also want to remind each and every one of you, as he did to a lot of people. You see the kid? He'd go, I'm the original. Jackie's just a cheap imitation from Japan. Thank
you. You were the mascot of the University of Vermont?
Damn right.
Does A.J. Foyt know that? Or did he know it? He did. I don't even know what a catamount is. It's a lion. It's a lion, and nobody roared in the pits. Jack Arute, the best pit reporter in the history of television motorsports. Our next presenter is third generation. Her grandfather, the owner of Thompson Speedway and Thompson Raceway Golf Course. Her dad, ready to be inducted, and to make the induction is his daughter, Olivia Bouchard.
I want to first start off by saying what an honor it is to be here today with all of you, and what a great day it is for New England Auto Racing. To all the inductees, I'd like to extend a heartfelt congratulations for this very well-deserved honor and recognition you're receiving today. As I sat down to write this presentation, I began reviewing my father's long list of accomplishments. His total win tally exceeds 150 wins. It also includes a Stafford Speedway SK Championship, a Yankee All-Star League Modified Championship, a Seekonk Speedway Rookie of the Year title, and maybe most notably, a NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year title. What I realized was these titles didn't tell his whole story. These were simply the chapter titles of a much greater tale. For example, telling you my father was a 1975 Yankee All-Star League champion is without a doubt impressive. But beyond that title is a story of a driver winning 2 out of the 6 series races at the young age of 20 and battling against some of the area's greatest veterans. He had to hold off names like DeCero, Stevens, Flemke, and of course his big brother Ronnie to capture that championship. To say he was in great company would be an understatement. Behind each designation, I found more details like these, and the details drove home the idea that my father was an extraordinary talented competitor. That talent led him to record wins at Stafford, Thompson, Waterford, Plainville, Westboro, Riverside, Seekonk, Monadnock, Hudson, Star, Oxford, and Beech Ridge. He was a winning driver for car owners like Bob Ramstrom, Lenny Bowler, Joe Brady, Teddy Marsh, and that's just to name a few. Now, I wasn't alive to witness firsthand most of these accomplishments, so all I have to go off of are the stories. And believe me, I've heard a lot of them. Here's a tip for anyone who goes to the racetrack with my dad. Don't ever go hungry, because in the 6 hours it will take you to navigate the 300-foot walk through the pit area to the concession stand, you will literally starve to death. Dad stops every 3 feet to talk to somebody, and I learned early on that you ask him for some cash at the pit gate, you go and get your own chicken fingers, and you let him do his thing. But in all seriousness, these pit area walks with my dad turned into front row seats to a lot of his greatest racing memories. One of my favorites was listening to Mario Fiore tell me about my dad and his red number 35 Pinto. Mario said when he would see my dad in that car pull into Monadnock, he would tell everyone, "Well, guys, it looks like we're racing for second today." We laughed, and Mario said, "No, but really, we hated seeing that car in the pit area." On top of talent, my father has an unmatched passion for racing. His desire to succeed drives him in every aspect of this industry. He found success as a 13-year-old car owner, and later on as a driver, a crew chief, and in recent years, as a coach to some of today's greatest racers. He did all of this. Oh, is this working? Hello? You guys can hear me, I can talk loud. He found success as a 13-year-old car owner, and later on as a driver, a crew chief, and in recent years as a coach to some of today's greatest racers. He did all of this while maintaining respect for himself, his fellow competitors in the sport. There's a Vince Lombardi quote that says, "If you'll not settle for anything less than your best, you will be amazed at what you can accomplish." Well, Dad, you have never settled, and your accomplishments are nothing short of amazing. I'm so proud of you, and I know Pepe and Uncle Ronnie are too. On behalf of my family, I am honored to present the 2016 New England Auto Racing Hall of Fame, my dad, Ken Bouchard.
All right, first of all, I'd like to thank my daughter Olivia for getting me crying already.
Hey, can you wait a minute? I'm going to replace the batteries on the mic.
All right. I was hoping I was going to get out of this. I guess not. Doesn't help to have to go after Jackie Arute, one of the best announcers in New England. Now they got to go to the worst one. Well, my daughter did a pretty good job.
Sorry.
You had to find batteries, huh?
Oh,
Wouldn't you just leave it alone?
Up here for everybody. Why? You don't like to talk?
No, I don't. I like to race. I don't like to talk.
There you go, handsome.
Thank you. All right, is it working now? Okay, good. First of all, I'd like to really thank NEAR for all what they've done. This is a great honor for me and my family, especially winning this deal means a lot. I'd like to start by thanking my family. I got my mother over here. She's 94 years old, and she's still coming to all the stuff that we do. So, she's a great lady. And we have Paula, Ronnie's wife, and Ronnie's kids. My sister Joanne and her husband Burgie. A lot of late nights work on the race cars. Joanne always packing up my mother on weekends, and the kids taking them all to the races for us. And of course, Robbie would make sure he let me know what I did wrong all weekend. He really helped me a lot, though, as he was always right. Even though he was young, he knew what he was talking about. Of course, I'd like to say our dad's the one that started all this with Red and White Movers, and with his driver, Pete Salvador, winning all kinds of races at Westboro and Brookline Pines. I know Dad and Ronnie are upstairs watching us, helping me get through this because I need it. We've done a lot, got to race with a lot of different drivers in my career. I guess the way I started, I got to race against guys like Freddie DeZaro, Bugsy Stevens. Bugsy, he was a character. I can remember one night at Stafford, he was leading a heat race, and we ended up running like the last 3 laps, 3 wide. It was pretty exciting where I was sitting because, of course, it was Bugsy, Ronnie, and me. I was on the outside, so it was getting real excited there for the last 3 laps. But we pulled it through in one piece, so it was a good night. There's so many drivers that I run with. You know I'm going to leave some out and stuff, but it was been a great ride. Bob Paul Valeri I seen earlier today. We've always had some good races. I'd like to thank some of the people that's always helped me along the way too. I got John Allenda Jr. here and his wife and his dad John Sr. They were always there helping, working on the car, and whatever we needed, they could help us. It was a great deal. Got Greg Felton back there and his dad Fred with the 37 Hank's car. That was a great car. We used to run at the park sometimes. Car was always fast with Fred's zero scrub front end. He'd always, if it wasn't right in the heat, feature time, you tell him what he wanted, he'd have it right. And car was quick and fun to drive, so that was a good deal. I'd like to thank Dave Rossback. He's been with our family since Ronnie started. He used to build our motors, work on our cars. If we run our own car, I wouldn't know how to go to the racetrack without Dave. Dave's always been with us, so he is part of the family. I'd like to thank him for all his hard work and all his great motors that brought us to the front. Got Brian, Bob, Rabbit back there to come and help every time we need it. Couldn't do it without those guys. It's been a great deal. I drove for a lot of owners in the modifieds because I like to race, so I'd go anytime they wanted. So if anybody needed a driver for a night, I don't care if it was Wednesday, Thursday, whenever they needed it, they'd give me a call, I'd go. Some of them were, like Joe Brady. I'd run his car. We did everything from asphalt to dirt racing, and with the same car, and we ended up winning the race at Beach Ridge. So whatever Joe wanted, I could do it. It was great. Bob Juckins, another great car owner that we ran off and on for, and with his help of Chuck Grimes, I think I seen Chuck here earlier. He was always there doing all the work. So great people. We ran with Ted Marsh and the Marsh family. Won a lot of races with the 55 car. Enjoyed it. Who else am I leaving out, Rob? I know you. Ralph, right? Racer Ralph, yeah. See, the old coupe at Plainville Stadium with the Rocco gang. Had a lot of fun there. Never got home too early from them races, though. It was always hard to move furniture the next day for my father. Yeah, Angie Cerise, another great car owner. Didn't spend a lot of money, but he worked hard and made the difference. Just like Lenny Bowler. Lenny Bowler was another great car owner. I filled in for Ronnie there whenever I could, because I love driving Lenny's car. And I made sure if anybody, all you probably know Lenny here anyways, but I made sure today I didn't have any green on, so I'm good to go to talk about Lenny in the 3 car. Otherwise, you know Lenny. It's been a heck of a career. Bob Johnson I've seen here earlier too. I filled in with the 17 when I could when Ronnie was gone. It was always fun. And Homewood, everybody, you know, and all through the racing the whole time, you always met a lot of great people, ended up with a lot of friends, a lot of fans that are here today. We couldn't do it, racing couldn't do it without the fans, but they're our #1 supporters, so we love them fans too, and always enjoyed talking to everybody. Ended up meeting a lot of good people, and I was very lucky because I got to do what I love to do, and that was race, and made a career out of it. So thank you very much, and like I said, I'm very honored to be in here with the Hall of Famers. Of course, my brother's in here too, so we were the first brothers to win Rookie of the Year in Winston Cup, and this is another great honor for the 2 of us in our family. I appreciate it all. Thank you very much.
A very emotional day today for the Bouchard family, and I don't think there's anyone who's won more races at many different tracks than Ken Bouchard. He's raced against Don LaJoie, he's raced against Randy LaJoie, and I think because he hasn't retired yet, one day he'll be racing against Corey LaJoie. And Ken Bouchard is officially in the New England Hall of Fame.
Can't wait to race against you again.
One thing we have learned, today we're talking about $1 million race cars, we're talking about $50,000 engines, we're talking about $1,000 seats, and we were just held hostage by a $2 battery. Making the next presentation, and we've already met him, he is one of the winners of today's Rada Mitchell Award, and people in Maine have been lucky enough to read his column for the last couple of decades. Phil Whipple.
Thank you, Matt, and again, good afternoon to you all. It is such a privilege to be here. This is really what I'm doing. About to make this presentation today is a true dream come true for me, because the individual I'm going to be telling you about and recapping a little bit of his career was one of my idols, driving idols. He's one of the men that influenced me to get involved with the NASCAR Busch North Series. I swear I'd get involved with it after I met him and saw him perform back in the early 90s, and I did so. And he's been a class act ever since. This is a real honor, folks. Our next inductee was born in rural Newburgh, Maine, and began his racing career in 1982 at the tender age of 15, winning 2 features and Rookie of the Year honors in Unity Raceway's Charger division. He dominated his sophomore season, winning 12 features and the championship. In 1984, he moved up to late models at Wiscasset Speedway and swept both the championship and top rookie honors. After joining the American Canadian Tour in 1988, the young driver from Maine won a 100-lap tilt at Wiscasset and a winners-only shootout at the famed Beech Ridge Motor Speedway in Scarborough, with a shout-out to our friend Andy Cusack, who's here with us today. A move to NASCAR's Busch North Series was next for this gentleman, the training ground for so much of New England's finest driving talent. In 1990, he won 2 races and another Rookie of the Year crown. He was almost unstoppable in 1991, winning 10 races, a series record which still stands today, aboard the familiar speedy oil change and tune-up Chevrolet. 2 of those wins, one at New Hampshire and at the prestigious Oxford 250, came in combination races with NASCAR's Busch Series. Those 2 wins put the young phenom from Maine on the national radar in a big way. Doors began to swing wide open now for this young man, and in 1992, the rising star from Newburgh moved south to run the NASCAR Busch Series full time. He won yet another Rookie of the Year title, driving for the number 99 entry for Bill Papke that year, and finished second in points with Papke's team in 1993. He signed DuPont to his own team for 1994, winning races at Hickory and Nazareth on his way to a second consecutive season as runner-up in points. A move up to the elite NASCAR Winston Cup Series came in 1995 at just age 28, and wouldn't you know it, he earned Rookie of the Year honors there as well. After some time away from the sport to heal from injuries sustained at Talladega and Texas, he returned to racing and won at Martinsville in 2001 in a shootout with Dale Jarrett. 2 years later, he beat Kurt Busch to the line at Darlington in one of NASCAR's still today most talked about and famous close finishes. This classy individual from Maine was named the National Motorsports Press Association's Person of the Year in 2003, and for his work in a widely recognized snowmobile charity snowmobile ride, Yay Sleds, in Maine's beautiful Moosehead Lake region. He retired from racing in 2005 and is now a highly respected NASCAR analyst with the ESPN network. Before I give his name here, I want to tell you folks just a little bit more about this individual. Having known him for over 25 years, this is a man not only passionate about racing and his career, this is an individual who exudes class in everything he does. Whether he's on a national television network giving his expertise on NASCAR competition, whether he's up here in New England speaking, or whether he's in his native state of Maine, he just exudes class. This man treats everybody, whether it's a lowly writer like myself or someone who works for ESPN or is in the garage each week at NASCAR Sprint Cup Series races, on a level playing field. He really is down to earth and a heck of a gentleman. He belongs in this hall for his accomplishments here in New England before he went on nationally. And this is really a big honor, very, very fitting today. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome the pride of Newburgh, Maine, into NEAR's Hall of Fame class of 2016, Mr. Ricky Craven.
Thank you very much. Boy, that was nice. I didn't know most of that. All of you associated with NEAR, it's a real treat for me to be here, and it's home, it's personal. For 25 years, I raced cars. I had 3 near-death experiences. One, Talladega, that was obvious. I don't know how many of you remember it, but I got a helicopter ride to Birmingham. I had a near-death at Texas Motor Speedway. And then the third, you probably never heard of, but it was when I spun Ken Bouchard at New Hampshire. Okay? Unintentionally, okay? And I apologize. Listen, he is a big guy. But he's twice as big when he's mad. Oh my gosh, that's the one that scared me the most. But it is an absolute honor, Ken, to go in with you, and Olivia, that was beautiful, remarkable. Jackie, Randy, Randy and I have circled the wagons for years. I think he's as much fun as anybody you can be with. Unless you're in Afghanistan, okay? If you ever get the chance to go somewhere overseas where there's a conflict, don't go with Randy LaJoy. But it's got to be an honor for you as well to go into a Hall of Fame that your dad's a member of, and I know that's invaluable. So it's rough when somebody gets up here that gets paid to talk, you know, and I promise I'm not going to drag this out. But it all really kind of pivots off of Martinsville, because I had worked my entire life to win a cup race. It was that important. I was dominated by it. And as I climbed toward that goal and got closer and closer, it was interrupted by injury. And I didn't think it was going to happen. And I can tell you, my life wouldn't have been complete, as unreasonable as that seems, because I got 3 beautiful children, wonderful wife, and it seemed like it escaped me. And I battled back, and other than New Hampshire, I don't think there would be a more appropriate place to win than Martinsville. And the reason why is because it was the best 20 laps I've ever driven in my life. And it was predicated on being a New England boy and having been tested at tracks like Beech Ridge and Oxford and Stafford and on and on and on. They don't come any tougher than Monadnock, right? Or Thunder Road. So everything that I put into those closing laps, and I had 2 new tires, Dale Jarrett had 4 new tires, and everything I put into that, it felt life-threatening because it was that important. It was the best 20 laps of my life. And I sat here thinking about how much of that was a contribution of the people I raced against. Guys like Robbie Crouch, who were just remarkable and just outstanding on 3rd mile, half-mile racetracks. Robbie taught me to take the middle of the corner, and he taught me how to use your feet, because short track racing is about your feet. And Joey Carafas, sitting in the grandstands watching him, I gave up some practice to go sit in the grandstands and watch Joey Carafas at Oxford because he was that good. Dave Dion, who did more with less than anybody I know. Just amazing. And he actually taught me how to pass drivers. You know, there's an easy way and a hard way. A lot of the folks that I raced with taught me, and I retained that. And it all became extremely valuable in the closing laps of that race. And my life is better because of it. And if you take nothing from today in the things I say, take this. I love my life. I have had a remarkable life. I grew up on a dairy farm. It wasn't easy. I hate cows. I hated them then, and I still, every time I bite into a cheeseburger, I feel a certain level of redemption. Because when you're on a farm, you can't leave, right? I mean, you can't leave. You have to do all these chores. And I wanted to be at the racetrack. And I learned how to work, and I was taught, I think, you know, you're molded as a child, but I was taught that by my mom, who's here, and she is an inspiration. I've never met a person with more integrity or more ambition and determination. So I got that from you, Mom, and I really, really value it. I'm not very bright, but I bust my butt. I'm not very bright, and probably hitting concrete at 200 didn't help. But it is about you getting out what you put in. And I watched folks like George Summers and Ron Bouchard, who was a hero of mine. And I wanted to be like Bugsy Stevens, even though he's never heard me say that. Richie Evans. I wanted to be like these guys. They were my heroes. And I took something from every one of these folks, and I applied it. And I recognized my dream. And today, you know, a big, big part of me recognizing that dream of winning a cup race was because of what they contributed. One last quick story about one of the members of the hall, and an example of what I learned. Somebody I really admired, but never really quite understood, John Paul Cabana. And if you know John Paul Cabana, he's a character. And I didn't have a lot of fun during my driving career. I was guilty of being too serious, if such a thing exists. I'm making up for it now. But
So I am dominating a race. I'm going to win this race. I mean, I'm just dominating it. And somebody loses an engine and puts oil down, and they put 40 ton of Speedy Dry on the track. And John Paul sent his crew chief over to tell my crew chief, look, tell Ricky not to be aggressive on the start, because we can take out the whole field. This is his race. He's in another stratosphere. Tell him to be easy. And I'll just line up I'll be on the outside. And so I said, cool. Robbie Crutch was behind me. I trust him with my life. And I accepted it. And we roll into turn 3. And just as I start to ease into the accelerator, John Paul Cabana goes, wow, come on. And I never saw him again. And I was so mad. After the race, I just marched over and he says, in his French accent, you learned a valuable lesson today. You know? Yes, I did. I have people ask me everywhere I go, they want to talk about Darlington, and it was exciting, and it was meaningful because it was Darlington, the track too tough to tame. And it also was the closing innings, you know, the top of the 9th inning of my career. A few people realized that, but I felt it coming, and I was 39 years old. I was asked today by a young lady, why did you retire so early? I was done. You know, I really can't explain it, except that whatever I had that drove me, whatever I had that dominated me, that pushed me through the lower levels to NASCAR, to the Grand National Series, and eventually to Cup, that energy was gone. It left me. And I don't regret it, because I won Martinsville. So, thank you all very much. This is an honor, and I want to thank my friends for coming here, my new family, the ESPN. I love people, and I tell the world that during my driving career, I did not drink. That was part of why I wasn't much fun. But I'm making up for it now.
And in a few moments, it will be official. You know, when the NASCAR races come on, I always root for the rain delays, because during the rain delays, you get to see Ricky Craven's win at Darlington all over again. It's been replayed more than Neil Armstrong's moon landing. And also thank you, Ricky, for getting me off of cheeseburgers. Our next presenter, you think of NEMA, the Northeast Midget Association, you think of this man. He has been a mechanic, a car owner, most recently the president, and he is one of the driving forces that keeps NEMA rolling. Mike Cemony.
Welcome. Can we get the radio, turn this thing off someplace? Anyways, I tell you, a few weeks ago, I got a phone call from Bruce Cohen. I didn't get a phone call, I got a sticky note. Called Bruce. I knew it had been a scam. I called Bruce back and I says, okay, Bruce, I know Nicky Fenora is going to be inducted to Hall of Fame. I'll take 2 tickets. He says, that's great, but I need something else. I need another favor. Whew. What else? More tickets? You're in. Now, I want you to be the inductee in Nicky Fenora Hall of Fame. I says, well, I says, I'll give it a try, because you know what? I didn't make my living doing speeches. So, Nicky, this is your day. Your fans, your family, Debbie, Nofri, Lanson, and Jarrett. That's your day too. Your dad's here, and he earned it. first time I met Noki was at Danbury Fairgrounds. I don't think he remembers, because I was a snotty little kid with a pair of glasses as big as my head. But I went down, and there were all the kids in the front of the stadium. They had these like stages, everybody used to play. So my mother goes out and buys me one of these stupid stock car, and it was pink, plastic ones. It lasted 2 minutes. I came back, and she says to me, "What happened?" I don't know. I think one of the Fornaro boys broke it. Now we're getting down to the Noki. Then one time I went to Atlantic City with my father, Iron Mike, and there's Nick Sr. tugging on my father, saying, "Hey, get the kids a ride. Give them a ride." This is the second time I met Noki and Drew at Atlantic City. I didn't meet him, but I says, "There's the kids that broke my goddamn stock car." All right. The years went on. We went all different ways. And then in '79, Noki made his appearance at AIDC in a limited schedule. But once again, he showed his talent. He won the race at Nazareth, PA, and also was racing USAC sprinters. 1979, at the end of the World Series, we had 2 cars. The third car was sitting at home. Somebody made a deal, bring the third car. My father says, "Let's give Noki a try, because if not, I'm going to have the old man pestering me the rest of my life." Well, Noki started in the tail, went up to the 8th spot, great finish. And you know what? He had no sticker tires then. 1980, we had no one to drive the car at Hudson. And so I'm sitting at the truck stop, and he bangs his hand on the thing and says, "Call Noki, get him up here." Well, Noki showed up, he took the ride, and that's where the history and the journey began. Well, Noki finished third that night, starting in the rear again, and the old man said, "You got a ride." 1981 is when Noki spread his wings. He won few races at the beginning of the year, but he finished big. He won 9 out of 10 the last races in NEMA. Boy, was that an impressive run. Also, we also raced that year at Terre Haute against the best in the business. 90 cars show up, 33 make the main. Nick goes out, never been there before, 17 quick time. We had a little issue. We could have probably won the race with broken axle, but everybody knew that Nick Menard was there, a young kid from New Jersey. Went to IRP night before the 500. Once again, we was in line. Noki never been there. We were first time with the car. I looked up, and Mel Kenyon was there, and I said, "Mel, can you do me a favor? Show Noki how to get around this place." Noki went out, first practice. Come in, how's the car feel? Great. Only one problem, I got no brakes. Second practice, goes out, follows Kenyon. Now, I'm gonna go by this old man. Drives down, drives away from him. I tell you, Mel Kenyon come over and says, "I guess you guys don't need no more help no more." But Noki, we had a good times out there. Only thing I won't say, what happened in the waffle shop will stay in the waffle shop. That year he became NEMA's 1981 NEMA champion with style. One thing stuck out that race was the Stafford Springs. I don't know what happened. We had, I think it was 28 cars, and we were starting 18th. We had won 4 in a row that time, right up to that point. And I don't know if one of their routes made a deal with my old man or not, but he says, you're starting in the tail. So Franco Ferrara says, hey, listen, you guys, we're not going to win it on the first race. First lap, just take your time, win it, go out. The old man speaks up and says, if you don't win, if he's not in the lead in the third lap, he's fired. Well, once again, green flag drop. Nuki drove where no one else drove, the third groove. And 3 laps, damn, he was leading it. Hell of a run. 82, I don't know what he did, but he talked the old man into running that gold leaf car on dirt. He must have had the hook in his mouth, because we did. We went up to AIDC and traveled every day, every weekend, to accomplish one thing, be a champ. Nuki won 7 races in 82, became the champion, and joined his father, Nick Ferrara Sr., 1950. The one race at Orange County Speedway, which brought up another one, that I was in Victory Lane, and this is where you can say, when you really need it, I want to win. We were in Victory Lane getting our pictures taken. Guy from the third turn crew comes over and hands me this left front spring. I says, you gotta be, I can't be mine. We just won the feature. I look down, there's a spring. Spring's missing off the car. I looked over to Noki, and he, dumbfounded, like a kid, says, it came off 5 laps to go. It's amazing what you can do when you really want to be ahead of your game. Again, 82, we won the championship. 83, we were invited to the Heroes versus the Outlaws, and the best in the business out there, Parsons, Volkovich, Kenyon, Schrader, Bigelow, the best. 2 weeks before that, we lost Iron Mike. So we said, let's go. We're going to do it. Went out there. He qualified fairly decent, started in the back. Matter of fact, it's on YouTube. He drove all the way up to the first spot. Won the B main, started second to last in the A main, and drove up through all the big shots to finish second. And that was a hell of a race. 1983, he got 6 wins with AIDC, 2 with NEMA. And also a big victory at 5 Mile Point with all the USAC guys. 1984, Noki, once again, 7 wins, participated in Silver Crowns events, and also another championship in 84. 85, once again, Noki, driving for Jimmy Reeder, won the championship in 85, and also won IRP the night before the 500. In 86, Noki was on his way to Indy. The rumors were he's had a test. Well, you know what? All things come to an end sometimes. But Noki ran into a roadblock with a bad accident at Eldora in a sprint car. With the help of Drew, and Gene, Angelello, and Debbie, his wife. And I'm going to tell you, that hospital didn't give Drew an answer, what's wrong with his brother. It would have tore the place apart. But he got back on his feet. Again, 1986, another championship. It makes it 5 championships in a row. It's amazing, the accomplishment he's done. 86, between that and many races after that, he was racing COT, American Racing Series, in 86. Silver Crown, 87. Once again, in 1995, another 6-time AIDC champ. USAC Sprinters, Silver Crown, you name it, he would drive it. 2000, Noki wanted to take a swing at the bat with the ISMA. You know what? It only took him 11 races. Showed himself at Oxford Plains in Victory Lane. He's done a terrific job with the the Suit modifieds. He's driven modifieds. And the last, but not least, from 2005 to 2009, he drove the number 4 car to numerous victories. Mike Jarrett's last race was October at the World Series, October 25th, and Mike was quitting racing as a car owner, but it was a storybook ending. Milky, once again, victory lane. I'm going to tell you, a good saying out there, put your best foot forward. Well, Milk did. He put his right foot to the accelerator. Hell of a driver, and you're never going to repeat you can never duplicate what he's done. Milk, I'm glad to induct you into the Hall of Fame. Don't cry, that's all.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I'm not much on words unless it's in a race, and has to do with a rule book. If it's not good, then I talk a lot. But anyway, I'd like to thank NEAR for this tremendous award and all the inductees today. Hi, Jack. And I was going to try to wing it, which I'm still going to try to do, but without the car owners that I've driven for, I've been very fortunate. I have probably close to 100, and I've been flown around the country. Not quite as good as Ricky and them other guys. I'm very, very fortunate to even be thought of to be put into this Hall of Fame here with the class here. I feel like an outsider, really, but anyway, without all the car runners and Mike, he basically got my career started, him and the old man. And I got with the sprint cars too. Gary Colucci is here. I won a sprint race with him, and John and Diane Ellis I also drove for, and they're here. But without car owners and the crews to help me do what I've done, and the fans, without the fans, we all know you have nothing. You can be the greatest in the world, and if without the race fan, you have nothing. So I want to thank them too. Like I said, I'm not much on words, so we'll keep this short. My family, without the support that I've had with my family, this couldn't have happened. I was a union iron worker only because, you know, you go to the union hall, if you got on a job and you didn't like it, you could kind of leave. But it was basically for racing. If I needed to go, I would give the guys a heads up. You know, so if I was connecting steel or welding or something, at 12 o'clock I'd be gone, so that's just what I had to do. But I'm not much, and I don't want to say too much more, but it's just to thank everyone. And I am a Danbury-born Connecticut Yankee, so, and that will always be with me, always. And I do have to say with Mike, I remember that stage, and it was me with that pink car, so. But Danbury, I can't get over Danbury. I just wish that was still there. Going there and going up on Mill Ridge where I lived and looking down on the mountain from the little hill there and seeing the stock cars run when the midgets weren't there was special. A lot of tracks in New England I love. One of my favorites, Jackie's. Where are you going to get anything better than Stafford or Thompson? I mean, come on, everybody's got. It's just beautiful. Anyway, I'm stuttering. I don't drink anymore, so this is just nerves talking. My hands are soaking wet. So, but just want to thank everybody again for attending here, and I'm in awe because I'm with such a great inducted people. Look at all these people here. How come they don't have these at regular racing banquets like this? This is great. Thank you very much for coming. And like I said, I'm not much on words, but thank you and everybody, especially my car owners. Sorry.
And there is a site right there. Noki Fedoro and Jack Arute. Anyone else who wants to be hugged, Noki is on his way. Ricky Craven's next, and who knows who will follow. We know who will be following him on the presenters list, and here's a guy who was a historian at the New London Waterford Speed Bowl. He still writes a column. He knows a lot about the history of Connecticut motorsports. Dave Dykes.
Thank you, Matt. I'd like to say good afternoon to everyone first. Okay, now you can hear me. Okay, this is kind of a special thing for me. It's not often that you get to go to the podium and induct a true childhood hero. And that's exactly what this driver was to me. And he's actually a big reason as to why I got involved with the sport. A lot of guys like this driver, another gentleman that's here, Bob Potter, some of the guys that were part of my childhood at the Waterford Speed Bowl. Uncasville, Connecticut's George Hewitt came to motorized competition via the two-wheel route. Prior to his debut in the world of stock car racing, he'd celebrated multiple championships as a member of the Indian motorcycle team during the 1950s and early 60s. A lot of people don't know that about Moose. He was an extraordinary motorcycle racer and a champion, as said earlier here. Says by that first ever four-wheel victory in the Bomber Division at Connecticut's New London Waterford Speed Bowl on Saturday evening, June 18th, 1966, he was quite accustomed to winning on a racetrack. It would only improve for the man nicknamed Moose. I never knew why Moose was nicknamed Moose. This was a powerful guy. He excelled at athletics before getting into motorcycle racing. I mean, he was just a true all-around athlete. By the 1968 season, Hewitt was firmly established as a top competitor in the Speed Bowl's headlining modified division, and he started winning. His first modified victory occurred in 1968, with many more to follow. By the dawn of the 1970s, he was no longer a regular at Waterford. I still remember that because it made me feel so bad because Moose wasn't going to be running at Waterford. But he had began successfully competing weekly in the NASCAR Modifieds at Stafford Springs Motor Speedway. Other raceways, such as Thompson, and also the big away events, such as Martinsville, Trenton, and Pocono, were also part of Hewitt's busy agenda. And I should also note that Moose did very well at the larger tracks like Trenton, Pocono, etc. And in fact, I've got it in my records, he was actually top qualifier at a lot of these events. And he was really, they were small teams. He was driving for people like Freddie Doolittle. He was running his own cars. And they were really, to be a top qualifier at one of those events was really something when it was a smaller team like Moose's. Hewitt experienced success at Stafford during what many New England modified racing aficionados considered to be that track's true golden era of NASCAR modified racing. He recorded multiple feature victories at Stafford between 1970 and 1975. Of particular note on that list of triumphs is a stunning and well-received underdog victory in the big Winston 100 on Memorial Day weekend in 1975 against an absolutely star-studded field of some of the best modified racers in the country. Some of the guys that are here today, as a matter of fact. Returning to the Speed Bowl for a residency in 1977 proved to be wildly successful for Moose. He was a veteran by that time. Between 1977 and 1984, he recorded 5 modified championships, tying for the then record with New England Auto Racing Hall of Famer and Speed Bowl icon Don Collins. During that period, he recorded an impressive 13 feature victories, boosting his all-time Speed Bowl modified record, and this includes the SKs in the early days, to an incredible total of wins. I mean, it was well over 30 wins. And this is another important aspect about Moose Hewitt. It should also be noted that Hewitt always relied on cars of his own design and construction to carry him to victory lane. This includes the years in which store-bought chassis had become the norm rather than the exception. This guy built some absolutely beautiful equipment, and the stuff he designed was just incredible. He was a great fabricator. He had a great team behind him, and it was all built in his shop in Uncasville, Connecticut. I mean, these cars competed at Martinsville sometimes against, again, teams that were much better financed. Unfortunately, Moose passed prior to the start of the 1997 season, quite unexpectedly. It was a regret for me because by that time, I'd got involved with PR at Waterford, and I never really even got a chance to interview him. I remember him as a kid. I met him several times, and like I say, he was one of my favorite drivers. And today he goes into the Hall of Fame. Could we get Moose's family up here, please?
We are so proud and honored for this to have happened. My father would have been ecstatic to be here. In the company of Cup champions and winners, and Jackie, he loved you. And you know, he used to go seek you out down in Florida whenever he could. But my family's here, my mother Jane, my sister Sandy, and my other sister Tammy. And a lot of our family time was at the races. And back in the day, before kids had iPods and electronic devices, can you imagine suffering a rain out for my mother with 3 kids in the back of a station wagon? We're just truly honored, and my father would have, he would have been so pleased. He was someone who did it his way all the time. And in fact, the last hours of his life, he had spent working on his race car. He was getting ready to, it was in February, and that was his plan. He came home for dinner and he died, and my mother found him. But he was hardcore. When he suffered from aorta, thank you, aorta heart disease. And several years before he died, it was at Christmas time, he had a pig's valve put in. And he was back in his race car at the Spring Sizzler. That's, you know, he was just driven to race. And we're just so happy. There's so many great drivers and personalities that have come before him in the near Hall of Fame. And we're just so pleased that you've honored him with this. And there's so many great people that haven't been honored yet. So we are truly, truly honored. Thank you very much.
Here's a man who told quite a few stories. In his announcing career, he's one of the smoothest announcers in New England motorsports, as he makes auto racing and the drivers who compete come to life. And he has been doing it for more than 30 years. John Spence.
Thank you very much, Matt. I'd like to start off by thanking the folks responsible for the selection process. In requesting me to become involved last winter, I was truly humbled when asked and appreciate the opportunity. In the past, I had the pleasure of presenting Pete Fiandaca and Paul Dunnigan to the Hall of Fame. This year, I have the pleasure of suggesting a driver that I strongly feel deserves the honor. And I'd like to thank the finalist committee of NEAR for being in agreement. It is no secret the name of Dwight Jarvis came up last year, but a little more work needed to be done, namely research. It was needed. It was suggested that I might consider Dwight as my first assignment, so we moved forward. With the help of guys like Phil Chastanet and Michael Weld, the research was underway, and I am very grateful for their help. The man that really needs to be up here today couldn't be here. A longtime voice of the Monadnock Speedway, Dave Sutherland. Many may not know, Dave is a historian when it comes to the high banks. Not only has he called races at Monadnock since its opening, he has documented every single top 5 finish of every race contested at the Dog since it opened. And a big thank you to him, my good friend Dave Sutherland, for his huge help. He recently moved to Florida. He couldn't make turnaround flights. You can imagine how that is. He couldn't make it work to be here today. He regrets it, that he had to pass on this opportunity. he asked me that I send along his best wishes to all of the inductees. And now just a few of the highlights, because I could go on an outstanding Hall of Fame career. Ascutney, Vermont's Dwight Jarvis started watching race cars from the hillside of Claremont Speedway. And like many kids from the area, he wanted to race. The track featured dirt racing until 1972, when the configuration was changed to a third-mile paved oval. Dwight started on the dirt before the change. On asphalt, he raced against the likes of the Mountain Man, Kirby Monteith, Donnie Ayer, Punky Karen, a Hall of Famer, Alan Whipple, Dave Grants, another Hall of Famer, Ollie Silva, Jack Bateman, Ernie Boudreau, Jerry Dostie, just to name a few. Dwight focused on another local racetrack that had become very popular in New Hampshire, the aforementioned Monadnock Speedway, and that provided a two-track circuit for Claremont stars and cars. Dwight rolled to his first win at Monadnock and was dubbed Rookie of the Year in 1973, driving for Darcy Hodgdon. 1974 saw 3 wins and a runner-up finish for the Monadnock Championship. The 1975 season, Dwight registered 10 wins. Dwight would steer cars for Dick Hodgdon, his brother Victor Jarvis, and again, a team made up of himself, his father-in-law, and brother in 1979. The 1980s saw a Troya mount and much success. And to this day, Dwight wheels a Troya car, making him the longest running, or as he says, the oldest Troya guy around. The famed black number 28 was conceived when racing with Jack Ryan in 1991. A car color of black and the number 28 he still carries to this day. 22 more wins between 1990 and 1998, including 3 more championships. And in 2006, he won the True Value Modified Racing Series Championship. All totaled, 47 wins and 5 championships at Monadnock. And from 1989 to 2003, 63 wins and 13 track championships at Claremont, including 5 times a Thompson 300 qualifier. The calculator says 117 career wins, 18 championships, and of course that 1 Touring Series championship with the True Value Modifieds. Dwight Jarvis still continues to race today with the Tri-Track Series and the bi-weekly modified shows at Claremont. Anyone and everyone that knows Dwight Jarvis has a story. We all have that one person we all know in the racing game that makes you smile, makes you laugh, and constantly has you saying, I don't believe what I just seen, and I don't believe what I just heard. Dwight Jarvis is one of those guys. Let me take you back to June 21st, 1975. It was a very special day for Dwight. Yeah, it was race day at Claremont. But it was the day he and his fiancée, Bonnie Hodgdon, tied the knot. Their wedding day. Dwight, being the real racer that he is and continues to be, said, I do. And then later, you guessed it, headed to Claremont Speedway. Then track owner Sonny Flory, aware that the new Mr. and Mrs. Jarvis were celebrating their marriage, prior to the start of the feature, had Claremont police conduct a sobriety test on Dwight, had him walk the line to make sure he was good to go. Dwight was good to go. Yeah, he put a ring on Bonnie's finger that day, but he also carried Sonny Flory's checkered flag around the Claremont Speedway as the winner of the modified feature that night. Dwight and his wife Bonnie, their 2 daughters, Jody and Jennifer, they have 5 grandchildren. They're biggest fans, Dwight's biggest fans. Like Richie, Maynard, Ronnie, George, and Fred, race fans know who you speak of when you mention their first names. When you mention Dwight or DJ, or as they say up Ascutney way, Dwight, the racing industry knows who you speak of. Dwight has been a fan favorite for many, many years. I know in our calls with the Modified Racing Series, he's always been a joy. joy not only to watch, but to call the action with Dwight Jarvis in it. And I always made it a point to point out to the fans, the hardcore fans knew it, the casual probably, but the new people, I'd always point out, keep an eye on the black 28. Because around lap 50, he's going to roll up the sleeves and go to work. He always did. He'll give you a show. Well-deserved, great racer, and a very big favorite in the pit area as well. Looked upon by youngsters that are getting in the racing game, and even longtime veterans for advice, suggestions, and if you need help to get to the front, Dwight Jarvis would offer his advice to help you along the way. It's the kind of racer he's always been. So with all that said, it is an honor to present the 2016 New England Hall of Fame. Once again, Dwight Jarvis is on his way to the front. Come on up here, pal. Dwight Jarvis.
Not the front where I like to be. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, John Spence Sr., for a great introduction and getting all this going. It's been a real honor to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. First and foremost, I would like to thank my family. My wife, Bonnie, been with me from the start and has never missed a race. Without her, I wouldn't be here today. Thank you. My daughters, Jody and Jennifer, and their families. All the love and support throughout the years. I would also like to thank my brother Peter, my nephew Joey, for continuing the family name in racing. By Joey winning the 2006 Claremont Speedway Modified Champion. Congratulations, Joe. Thank you to the Rathbuns. They've been fans since the start. Geraldine Rathbun, being the president of my fan club, with the one member, her daughter Sherry. Throughout my 43 years of racing, I've had some great crew members. Some of them are here with me today. David Kibbe has been with me off and on since '77. Thank you. Charlie Well, who helped me for many years, also bringing his youngest son, Michael, who is now my crew chief. Michael has stuck with me for many years and is an amazing crew chief and a great friend. Thank you. Philly Chastity, who has helped me not only on the car, but behind the scenes, capturing some great memories with his camera. Thank you. Thank you all for everything and helping me make my racing career successful. Last but not least, I would like to thank all the sponsors I've had throughout the years. We all know how important those sponsors are. Thank you all so much. This is so much to me. Thank you.
John Spence making the presentation to Dwight Jarvis. You know, I thought Dwight's #1 accomplishment, 117 victories, 18 championships, but who else could get married and win a race on the same day? Imagine, 2 major trophies in one day. Only Dwight Jarvis could do that. Our next presenter started covering motorsports in 1971. His first assignment, the Schaefer 500 in Pocono. I don't think they make Schaefer beer anymore, but this man's riding career in journalism has continued for more than 40 years. Pete Vanderveer.
Matt, you use that line every year. I'm drinking Heineken now. I moved up a little bit. Randy, you went to Afghanistan? Oh my God, I'm working this deal. Maybe we could go to Mozambique together. First, before I begin the body of this induction speech, there are three people I'd like to acknowledge. One is 2000 Hall of Fame member, inductee, Don LaJoy, who I know is a proud papa today. Don, would you stand up for a moment? Please stand, Don, just to be recognized one more time. The other day, Don said to me, you're not going to ask me to make a speech. I don't have to get up and talk to you. And I said, no, this is your day, a very special day for you and your family. Two other people I'd like to recognize before I make the main part of the speech. Unfortunately, sadly, both of them are no longer with us. One is Charlie Mitchell, who is the longtime motorsports writer for the Norwalk Hour, who, if you were here today, would be as proud of this moment as Daddy Don is. The other is former WICC Motorsports talk show host, Dean Mercier. Our next inductee did several of his shows, and Dean and I made many of Randy's local Busch Series races. There are seminal moments in each and every one of our lives. Some we attach joy, celebration, and smiles to. Others are met with shock, overwhelming sadness, and grief. When Randy LaJoy was 14 years old and going through what most kids his age encounter, he learned the horrifying news that his older brother, Randy, 17, had been killed in a car, Ronnie had been killed in a car accident. Ronnie had already begun a racing career in hopes of following in the footsteps of his father, Don, by 1975, a very successful Saturday night racer and champion at the Danbury Fairgrounds race arena. Ronnie had all the tools to do well in the sport, Don recalled. Ronnie, he was moving in that direction when he was killed. Randy, on the other hand, didn't appear like he wanted to be a racer. He would watch while we worked on the Danbury cars and Ronnie's go-karts. He didn't want to get his hands dirty. Following a period of mourning, 14-year-old Randy LaJoy made up his mind. I saw how good my father was, and I realized that Ronnie would have been that good or even better, Randy said. Many families go through what we did. It's always a tough thing for every family. I decided at that point I wanted to honor my brother. I decided to go headlong into racing. Of course, Don LaJoy couldn't have been happier. At 16, Randy began racing go-karts at Norwalk's Calf Pasture Beach, a facility that Don had been directly involved in organizing, along with Wilton businessman and prominent road racer Bob Sharp, also a member of the Hall of Fame. Randy went from go-karts to Danbury's new sportsman division in 1980, winning the track's title in 1981, the last year of Danbury's existence. What a stellar season it was. 22 starts, 14 victories. From there, the progression was into SK Modifieds and onto the Busch North Series and a controversial title in 1985. Then it was onto the Busch South Series, where Randy won titles in 1996 and 97 for Bache Racing. He captured 15 Busch Series wins in all and did have a brief stint in the Winston Cup Series, driving for car owners Bill Davis and Frank Ceci. He became part of racing history by becoming the first Northerner to go south and win a title. The numbers in all of these induction speeches aren't the true relevant part of the story, however. Glimpses into the true nature of the individual are found in other places. This story, more importantly, is about a racing family. In 1983, while running for the Waterford Speed Bowls SK Modified Championship, Randy ran into a roadblock. In a late season feature, father and son were running 1-2 as the laps were dwindling down. The late George Moose Hewitt, also one of our inductees this year, was running third in the pursuit of the track title. He was running in front of me, and he wasn't about to let me by, Randy remembers. I saw him flip up his mirror. The only way I could have won that title was to pass, and my dad was, and that was not going to happen. Randy reluctantly finished second, Don won, and Hewitt took the title. It was around this time that Don had to make a hard decision. My late wife Kathy said to me, "Dear, I can't split myself in half and go to both of your races." And Don made the decision at that point to retire from the sport. And he went out and bought a huge motorhome so he could proceed to all the races, all of Randy's races along the way. And as Don says today, I'm still trying to sell this thing. Maybe Randy will buy it. Other moments highlighted Randy's career. Who could ever forget the Daytona wreck? All of you have probably seen it. Its moments on YouTube. Randy and the Skillman brothers' construction car out of control, heading perilously through the Daytona Speedway's front stretch infield. The ensuing big-time crash into the barrier, his end-over-end barrel-rolling exploits. Pretty scary stuff. Following the close of his career in 2006, Randy LaJoie turned his skills to building a business based around safety, something his father had always believed strongly in. In 1971, my dad bought a race car seat at the Hartford Auto Show, Randy remembers. It was built then and used by Mark Donahue. Donahue was a Brown University grad, an engineering student, and a damn good racer in both the Trans Am and IndyCar series. My father always has been a nonstop thinker about all things involving racing, Randy said. He's always trying to figure out how to build a better mousetrap. Well, Randy picked up on it. His company, The Joy of Seating, was formed, and he currently travels around the country to Saturday night tracks preaching safety. A funny story about his business is worth telling. Randy told me he always believed that a seat should conform to your backside, much like a helmet is fit to protect your head. Some people have told me that I used to drive at times like they were one and the same, with joy, like Randy likes to say. As Randy and his wife have moved into their later years, they are now a three-generation family with Corey, 25-year-old Corey, driving in the Xfinity Series. Their other son, Casey, is in the announcing business. At this time, I'd like to have Lisa, Randy's wife, come forward. She has a special message for Randy and all of you.
Thank you. This message is from Corey, because he really wanted to be here today, but he was unfortunately not able to get here from Phoenix and had to stay for sponsorship obligations there and couldn't make it. But he wanted Randy to know, hey Pop, sorry I could not make it tonight with our family and extended racing family to see you become a Hall of Famer. Although I am not there tonight, it's by all of your love lessons that you instilled in me that I'm able to do what I love and everyone in this room loves, to race. I thankfully owe the man who hammered these valuable lessons into me, who would pass them down to me, the Hall of Fame member and grandfather Don LaJoie. The numerous wins, the several NASCAR championships, and one hell of a successful driving career are the reasons why you are on stage tonight. But being a great dad is why you're Hall of Famer in my book. Love you, Pops. Corey.
Might need one. Thank you, Sunshine. As you probably see that, Kenny, this ain't easy. Where'd he go? Yeah. My lovely bride, that's one of the features that, like Dwight, that was one of my best wins I've ever had, that's for sure. You know, growing up, I had to be 18 to start. Danbury wouldn't let you start racing until you were 18. I mean, now you can start right out of diapers. So I had to start watching racing. I mean, I had to watch Don LaJoie. He raced at Danbury for a little bit, and then he ventured to Stafford and the Yankee All-Stars. And he raced in the mid-70s in the modifieds. Really? The best time ever. And I was a kid watching Don LaJoie and Paul Valeri and Bugsy and Bouchards and Flemke and Summers and
that was the greatest time ever to be a race fan. I learned to go to the Race of Champions at Trenton. And I seen stuff I still can't believe. You can't make this stuff up. The stuff that I seen when I was a teenager. No, in their infield, outside at the Trenton. I mean, camping at Trenton for 4 days. It's just simply amazing the stuff that I seen that the racers embedded in me. And then Bob Johnson called. I think he pissed off a driver, and they needed a driver, and he got my dad, and he didn't have a uniform, and he borrowed Richie Evans' uniform. And he put it on, and he drove over Charlie Jazan back after he blew up, and he launched it out of your dad's park in turn 3. And then they started building these Speedway modifieds. So they built a funny looking Firebird and used that thing for a long time. And we resurrected it and built a cigar box. I don't know if it was in the 80s to turn it into a Busch North car. But growing up, watching racers and learning good, bad, and different. You know, I mean, we didn't race. You know, we had to learn it from somewhere. And I learned it from, you know, Hall of Famers. You look at the list of drivers that are here, modified racing. And then when I was modified racing, when I was watching all this and reading Val Lucier's Speedway Scene, you know, I was also looking at, you know, the taxi cab stuff, looking at the Dragon Brothers and Jean-Paul Cabana and the Canadians and the North Tour. Looking at that stuff, I was like, man, I can do this. You know, I want to do this. So after my Danbury days, after Pop went and did his NASCAR stuff or did his modified stuff, you know, he read the rule book and he built the car by the rule book and he got his ass kicked. You know, and then he figured out that those guys are cheating. They didn't read the same rule book that he did. So when he went back to Danbury, he read the right rule book. And then he spanked their ass. So then when he did go out everywhere else, you know, he did run well. So there was quite a difference to say he always wanted to build a better mousetrap. So when I started racing, and when they allowed me to when I was 18, then they shut the place down. You know, Nicky, you know, I mean, Danbury was a wonderful racetrack. It was 8,000 people every down week at a facility. I mean, what a racetrack. Well, what a facility. What a family-orientated place. I mean, on one hand, if it was still open, I would still be there. And I probably, you know, I wouldn't have never went anywhere else. But during that time, being Pop had a junkyard, I remember the Honings coming there and getting stuff. Bill Slater, Bobby Judkins coming down, getting stuff. So he knew a lot of the racers that would come down to the junkyard. I mean, Bobby Judkins come down and get parts to build an independent front suspension. So a lot of people he had a lot of influence with. So once I got out of modifieds, once Danbury closed, went to New London. Dick Williams was a promoter there. They had these taxi cabs show up one night. He goes, Randy, you want to drive one of these cars? Robbie Crouch's dad had a car. C.A. Crouch had a car. And Dickie Williams says, Randy, I want you to drive this guy's car. I said, okay, I don't care. I got a helmet. I'd drive anything. And drove this car. And then later on, they made a movie of the right way and the wrong way. And I drove this old car, and I had a blast for 35 laps. Well, the problem was it was 150 lap. And same thing, I mean, as the movie goes, old Robbie Crouch's dad, C.A., he was a Southern man, and he says, son, you just drove the car too fast through the corners. Really? That's what you're supposed to do. Well, it took me a long time to realize tire management. You know, and at like the 40th lap I was done, my ton was hanging out and the car wasn't no good. And I said, if you just fixed the car, I could have been a whole lot better. I said, okay, these cars are fun to drive for 35 laps. So I did learn a lot rather quickly on tire management. But Dickie Williams gave me that opportunity when the Northern Tour came in. Bob Johnson was there. Bob Johnson liked what he saw. And he says, hey, we got this old modified that we have a Pontiac body on that, you know, they have this Northern Tour. Let's see if we can build this thing and go to Stafford with it. And then go to Dover. We went back to the junkyard and cut an old body off of a car out back and put it on that car. It wasn't the prettiest thing,
but we raced it at Stafford, and we went to Dover with it, and I think after one of the practices, the crew guys were looking for the air tank. It was in the trunk. So it's one of those things that we did. So it's just stuff that we did when we were going. So we went north racing. We sold all modified stuff. And who was the first one to buy my modified stuff? Don't get mad at me. Teddy Christopher. I was the first guy to sell him a car. There's a lot of pissed off people. A lot of guys bought bumpers because of you. Chassis, clips, Eddie Flemke, sorry. He was the first car I sold, sorry. Don't get mad at me, don't shoot me. But, you know, his first car was my last car. I think, you still have it? No. God, I thought you saved everything. You know? You can put it in a new house you're building. Is it as big as this? He's building a house twice the size of this place. You still got Galante's money. So we go north racing. You know, we go north racing, and I'm having a little tough time. And Eddie, your dad coming. We used to race Thunder Road, you know, 4 or 5 times. You talk about cows. The Milk Bowl. I never was good at Thunder Road. Never did really well. And we raced there 5 times. So it was about a couple weeks before the Milk Bowl, and Eddie was talking to my dad and myself, and he goes, "Randy, you going up to the Milk Bowl?" I said, "Yeah, I am, Eddie. I hate that place." And he says, "Why?" I just don't like it. Just don't like it. He goes, "Well, you beat already." I said, "Why? What do you mean?" He goes, "You're never going to run good if you don't like a racetrack." I said, "Okay." I said, "How do you change that?" He said, "I tell you what." He goes, "I know Bob." He goes, "I'll talk to Bob. I'm not sure if he ever did." He says, "But I'm going to have Bob change something on the race car." He said, "He'll change the setup of the race car." Because I want you to go follow Dave Dion. I said, "Okay." It's not easy to do. He's pretty quick there. He just find him in practice and follow. I said, "Okay, I can do that." So first practice, I'm not sure if Bob changed the car, but I believe that he did, because it didn't drive totally different than it ever had been. And I followed Dave Dion, and I've been to parts on that racetrack I never seen before. I was like, "Oh, okay, this is good." So we're at the driver's meeting, and Dave Moody, who's the voice of, other than Squires, he's the voice of New Hampshire, Vermont. He says, "Randy," he says, "word has it, you're running pretty good." Maybe, we think we're okay. He goes, "So you're going to kiss that cow today?" I said, "Dave, if I win this race, I'll beat that cow." We were in the race. Dave's in victory lane holding the cow. So I'm not keen on cows either, Ricky. I'll eat a burger though. But it's simply amazing how, you know, families are involved in this. My first race car, my dad bought repossessed out of a body shop in New Haven. It was a Fred Rosner car. I see Freddie over here. Our first North car, the North car we won the championships, was a Freddie Rosner car. Freddie's son, Wesley, worked for me in the seat company when I started the seat company. It's, you know, everything. One night my dad called, he goes, "Hey, we got a guy called up, Pete Fiandaca, called up. He's traveling from Long Island to Massachusetts, and he blew his motor up." And I went to machine shop school. And I was in machine shop school, in high school. And he says, he needed pistons cut because he blew his motor up. He says, go down the junkyard. He says, he's stopping by. He wants you to cut pistons for him. So him and his crew chief, Steve Bird, stopped by. So here I am, a kid in high school, cutting pistons for Pete Fiandaca and Steve Bird, who later was my crew chief when I won championships in the South in 96 and 97. Dick Moroso and my dad knew each other a long time. Dick Moroso calls me after I'm down south, try to get the job and try to knock on doors. And Dick says, "Hey, I'll give you 2 races. You want them?" "Yeah." "Oh, hell yeah." Jump in the car and finish second to Earnhardt at Talladega. Finished second the following week to Mark Martin at Darlington. wow, I got a job for next year. This is cool. Who's my crew chief the following year? Bob Johnson. You know, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, this racing stuff is just so cool. And then to get inducted into the New England Hall of Fame, I mean, this is such an honor. You know, from watching these guys, you know, the other 7-Eleven, Pavaleri, Bob Potter, the guy ain't changed than ever. I mean, the guy's still the same as he was 30 years ago. I mean, this is insane. I looked in the mirror, you know, about 10 years ago, and I seen my dad. I turned around, and he wasn't there. I was like, oh, shit, I'm getting old. I said, golly. But it's just such an honor to be here today. We got a bunch of tables here, a bunch of guys that have helped me, have pushed me. You don't realize how much work goes into this stuff. You don't know how much, you know, on the old North Tour, from going from Maine to New Hampshire to St. Air to Cayuga, stopping at the hotels, and until my son started racing, and I had to do all that legwork that my mom would do, you know, hotels and food and golly, it's the behind the scenes, that the little knickknacks that go into racing, that, you know, yeah, we miss our mom. We just buried my father-in-law. What a piece of work he was, you know. I mean, it just so you know, the wheels in motion that create this wonderful sport that we are in is fun to see worldwide. I'm out there preaching safety. Here's a quick little story. A guy calls me up. He goes, hey, 1988, I think it was. I wasn't doing a whole lot. Hey, come drive my car in Oxford. And I, hell yeah. I said, this is a fast race car. So I haul my butt up to Oxford, and I kind of forget that I'm 200 pounds. Okay. So I run to the car with my helmet bag. Well, the guy that gets fired is 150 pounds. And I was like, oh boy. I was like, this is going to be fun. So I kind of push open the seat a little bit, and I practice, and I was like, boy, this thing is fast. I said, but I can't drive it because it's too damn small. The seat's too small. Well, thankfully, it was a double header. It was at Maine. The modifieds were there, and the North cars were there. So I said, okay, thankfully, Jimmy Spencer has 2 modifieds there. So I go see Paul, Eddie, the pretty one. So I said, Eddie, can I take the seat out of the backup car and put it in this North car? He said, yeah, go ahead, no problem. So I unbolt the seat, and I go and I bring it to the North car. I bolt it in the North car, and I finish second. So the modifieds are warming up. Eddie comes across the track. Hey, LaJoy, come on, get your stuff. Why? Just get your stuff. I said, I gotta take pictures. No, screw the pictures, come on. So we run across the track. I got my helmet, we're going over. And the modifieds are warming up in the infield, or in the pits. I said, Eddie, he goes, come on. So he got the car, he goes, they're paying $600 a start. They ain't got enough cars, get in. So he shoves me in the window, and I'm putting my helmet on, I'm buckling in, and right before he puts the window net up, I said, Eddie, it doesn't have a seat. He says, they ain't gonna check. And he clicked the window net. So what do? Strap my helmet, buckle up, and I'm sitting in a championship car, Hutter motor, sticker tires, and I run about 10 laps. So I'm out there today saying, we have to protect race car drivers from themselves because we're all nuts. You know? So that's at the end of the day. I mean, racers, whether it's Kenny Bouchard, you know, Dwight, the King, we're all nuts. You know, it's something that gets in us that when we strap into a vehicle, there's nothing like it, ever. And when you're good at it, it's pretty damn fun. And I'm glad I could do what I did for as long as I did. Hit way too much stuff, but you know, that's fun too sometimes. And Ricky, I had one of those near-death experiences on a ride up here. Stopped at the wrong gas station. Other than that, we're all good. So thank you all. This has been a wonderful day, and we got a good ride home. Thank you.
And hopefully they run me the same way. Then we went from there to, actually Bobby Judkins gave me a chance at Riverside Park to drive his car. And there's a legend. Even though his wife was my cousin, which helped. He gave me a chance. We went to Stafford Speedway on a special race on a Tuesday night, Modified Madness. And all I really wanted to do on that night there was just not be lapped. I was racing against Richie Evans, Bouchard, Bugsy Stevens, all the great people. And we accomplished that deal. And then the following year, Bobby didn't have a driver at Riverside Park, and I started driving for him. And I really appreciate what he did for me and taught me a lot. It's kind of funny because he would never ask me what the car was doing. He'd say, you know, what do you think? No, it's not bad. He said, well, I see where you're lacking a little bit. He said, I'll fix it. And he did. And we won 3 championships in a row at Riverside Park. He built a car, and he called it his kite. And I went down there one day to get seated in the car and get fitted and stuff like that. And I got in the car, he had it on the scales. He says, where's the rest of you? I go, this is it. This is all. He says, what do you weigh? 140. He goes, damn, he said, I'm going to have to put a lot of lead in this car. But that car there was a kite. It was something that he built himself. And just like Muse Hewitt, he had his own innovations. He had his own ideas. And he made me a great driver. He gave me the opportunity. And I really thank him. Then we went to the Busch North. And to me, that was the elite. That was the elite. Ricky Craven knows. Raced against all Bobby Dragon, all of them guys. And I had ultimate respect for every one of them. And I learned a lot in that division. I wanted to be competitive. And I worked hard at it. I worked really, really hard. I spent a lot of money too. And had great success. I drove for some great car owners. And you can't ask for any better than them people that give you the opportunity to drive for them. Mike O'Connor, one of the best teams I've driven for, and the greatest and the most generous people I've been with, and had the pleasure to know. Then I started running the Modified Tour on a part-time basis with Art Berry and different teams, and had great success. And I really appreciate all those car owners that all gave us a chance to do what we love best, and that's race. And no matter what the outcome was, if it was a bad night, come over and said, next week we'll be better. We'll be better, don't worry. And we were, and things were good. And last but not least, Mario Fiore. We had our ins and outs. I called him up one time and said, I want to drive your car in Florida. Well, it's going to take you X amount of dollars to drive my car in Florida. Well, I didn't have it. And I said, well, lesson learned. So as time goes on, in '94 at Riverside Park, they had a Modified Tour there. And I get a phone call from Mario. I would like you to drive my car at Riverside. And I gave it a little bit of thought, because he kind of pissed me off a little bit when he said no. So I says, yeah, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to win that race. I want to make it a point to win that race. I want to give it everything. We went to practice. We went to one practice. Paulie comes over, Haskell comes over and says, what do you think? I said, we're good. We're good. I know it's going to be good. We time trialed, and I blew that up. I went 1 lap. We got 2 laps. I pulled in the infield. What happened? He says, we're all set. Yep, you had another lap. Oops. So we started in the top 5, and we ran. We pitted for tires. The guys did a great job pitting the car. We came out front, and we just finished the race, and we won. That was one of my biggest accomplishments back then that I could really think of. So time went on, and raced some modifieds and some Busch cars. Got with Mike and Pam O'Connor and different drivers and different owners, and had a blast. You can't ask for no more. Then in 2000, Mario started calling me again. And at that point there, when I ran that one race for him, he called me the next week and he says, you want to run another track? And I didn't know what track it was. I can't even remember. I says, no, I'm all set. Thanks. And I did that to get back at him for the time he told me to turn me down. Mario was a great guy, though. He was a great competitor. and he knew what he had needed to get done. And Reggie Ruggiero competed against him year in and year out, and we fought for battles at Riverside and other tracks, and just head to head. It was my pleasure and a great time. 2000, he calls me up, and I kind of put him off. I said, no, well, let's try it. It's only going to be a part-time deal. Go to one race, see how it works out, go to the next race. Who would know? You finish the year 5 wins in the national championship in the modified. Guys, thank you. Teddy Hebert, great sponsor, Teddy Bear Pools. If it wasn't for him, that would not have happened. Thank you. Then I started racing throughout the modified tour for the next couple of years. Matter of fact, the following year we won the very first race out, and we went to a race with Greg Nardi. We raced his car at Waterford, and then I got a call from Mike Bowler, and he had, you know, limited funds and limited car, and he says, I want you to drive my race car. I says, why? You're driving your race car, don't you? He says, yeah, but he says, I can't do what I need to do and do both things the right way. So I got together with him. We had 3 wins that year, and we finished second in the points again. And I got to thank the Bowler family for that. Then I finally decided in 2007, well, and I gave it a long, hard thought. And I finally told my wife, I says, I'm retiring. She goes, what? Now there's one fan of racing that is, to me, is a number 1 fan. Because I thought I was gonna get my ass kicked. She goes, what are you, nuts? I can't believe you're thinking about this. I says, what is there to do? What more can you accomplish in the races that you've done? The only thing I could do is go race against Ricky Craven in the Cup Series. But I thought, you know what, I've had a good career. It's been a long career. I fought hard for what I got. And my family's been behind me 100%. All my kids, my wife, my sister, my brother-in-law, my whole family. And I gotta thank a couple of my boys over here, Paul and Brian. They've been with me for, God, gotta be like 30 years of it anyway. But I gotta thank Near. Again, like I said, I never thought I'd be here. But I'm glad that they recognize what we do as racers. And I'm very proud to be one of the inductees. Thank you.
Now when you hear the phrase higher than a kite, you'll think of one man, Jerry Markey, who took that kite car and many others like it to more than 300 victories in an amazing career. And the presentation has been made, and now, joining the ranks of the New England Hall of Fame, Jerry Markey.